Imagine waking up to find your entire sect has vanished without a trace. What would you do in this world of cultivation? Our story begins with a young man who unexpectedly became a candidate for the elite Tai sect, only to find everyone gone. Soon after, a system informs him that in 3 years, a great catastrophe will strike the world, leaving nothing but ruin. Assuming the sect fled after hearing the news, he decides to scavenge their resources to frantically increase his own power. However, he has no idea that the sect didn't actually abandon him, but was caught in a sudden, unexpected accident. They are all trapped in a secret realm directly above the sect, meaning they can see his every move from above. But when they witness him breaking through his bottlenecks in a single day and refining top-tier pills, the entire sect is stunned. They realize this boy is their only hope, while he, wandering the empty halls, remains utterly confused by the silence. Just as he wonders what on earth is happening, a cold, mechanical voice suddenly echoes inside his mind. Ding! The ultimate self-preservation system has been successfully bound, and it has detected the state of the host's current world. In exactly 1,024 days, a great calamity will occur, resulting in the deaths of trillions of living beings. Only by reaching the heavenly venerate rank can one find a slim chance of survival, and the system will assist him fully. He stands there speechless, but then an even more ridiculous thought crosses his mind regarding the missing disciples. He becomes convinced they didn't just vanish, but actually ran away early. To be honest, he feels quite betrayed by this. He wonders why they didn't take him along, so he asks the system what its functions are, hoping for a shortcut. He warns the system that his physical talent is quite poor, and if it relies solely on him, they are both doomed. The system immediately replies that its primary function is to assist his cultivation, guiding him step by step toward becoming a powerhouse. It then issues an introductory task, check in at the sect's library. A difficult task, or so the system claims. Upon completion, his natural talent will be increased by 10,000 times. Naturally, this revelation leaves him completely shaken. He never expected such an exaggerated reward, especially since as an outer disciple, he normally wouldn't even be allowed near the library. But with the sect now completely deserted, this task presented no difficulty at all, so he immediately set off for the library. Meanwhile, in the endless void high above the Tai sect, every disciple and high-ranking official found themselves trapped. This place was known as the Tai True Void, a sacred ground used by the sect every 10 years for cultivation and training. The leadership had brought the disciples here for experience, but just as they prepared to leave, the exit unexpectedly sealed shut. While the disciples remained deep in meditation, unaware of the crisis, the expressions of the sect leaders grew increasingly grim. Sect Master Chen Sheng tried to calm the others, reminding them that the Tai True Void had endured for countless generations. He suggested that perhaps the spatial structure in certain areas had simply loosened over time. They only needed to wait for the Supreme Elders to repair it. Upon hearing this, everyone looked toward the high dome above. We see 3 elders sitting cross-legged in the void, working together to investigate the disturbance with their combined spiritual power. Each of them possessed power that could reach the heavens. Surely, with them there, this malfunction would be resolved. The leader's expressions softened slightly. Chen Sheng spoke again, noting that while the elders worked, they should not remain idle. He urged them all to think of a clever strategy that might assist in their escape from this predicament. Elder Shangguan of Tianji Peak was the first to speak, remembering that not every single disciple had entered the secret realm. One person remained outside. 3 years ago, the holy maiden, Xiao, had entered seclusion at the foot of Dragon-Slaying Cliff. She sought to reach the Zifu realm and left word not to be disturbed, meaning she was indeed the only one left behind. Hearing this, Elder Lu of Tiangong Peak nodded happily, realizing there was still a glimmer of hope for them all. The Tai True Void had a backup activation array that could open the passage from the outside once the holy maiden emerged. Finding the sect empty, she would surely use her legendary wit to realize they were all trapped within the secret realm. The elders looked relieved at this prospect, but the master of Tianji Peak still wore a look of deep frustration. He pointed out that the holy maiden's seclusions lasted 5 to 10 years, and she was currently at a critical breakthrough stage. He feared she might not emerge for another 20 years, causing the smiles on the leaders' faces to freeze instantly. After a long silence, Sect Master Chen Sheng let out a heavy sigh. He told them to set it aside for now and check the situation below instead. Perhaps the holy maiden had already finished her seclusion. With a flick of his fingers, he cast a spell to make the spatial barriers transparent. As they looked out at the world below, an elder pointed toward a specific spot in surprise, asking why someone was standing at the outer peak entrance. Following his gaze, the entire group looked down and indeed discovered a lone figure standing on one of the mountain peaks. We see him wearing the robes of a preparatory outer disciple, walking into a mission hall with his hands behind his back. He then took out his disciple token, connected it to the unmanned mountain stone, and began frantically pouring contribution points into it. To be honest, it was a bold move. The elder in charge of the mission hall roared in fury, calling it outrageous that this boy dared to act while the sect was empty. He accused him of blatantly stealing contribution points, wondering if the boy had any shame at all. The sect master snorted coldly, flicking his sleeve in disgust. He declared that a person with such low character and poor morals was utterly unworthy of being part of the Tai sect. Our protagonist, however, had no idea he was being watched. Seeing the points in his token rise steadily, he felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Since everyone else had seemingly run away and left him alone, he figured there was no harm in taking a little extra for himself. He told himself the elders couldn't possibly blame him. Meanwhile, high above in the true void, the mission hall elder continued his heated rant. He called the boy shameless, claiming his skin was thicker than a city wall for taking 100,000 points without stopping. What a scoundrel! The sect master turned to Yin Jun, asking if he recognized the boy. Yin Jun watched the figure below for a moment before it finally clicked. He reported that the boy's name was Shi and that he had arrived at the sect 6 months ago after crossing the vast boundless sea. Seeing such a resilient heart for the path, Yin Jun had admitted him according to the rules, but the sect master simply waved his hand dismissively. He scoffed at the idea of a resilient heart, telling Yin Jun to look closely at the boy's actual character instead. The moment the boy saw the sect was empty, he began treating the sect's resources as his own personal property. The sect master muttered that while he couldn't punish him from within this secret realm, things would be very different once they got out. The sect master ordered him to go to the Hall of Discipline for 300 strikes. Yin Jun bowed quickly and retreated. The master of the transmission peak watched the boy below and shook his head. Meanwhile, our protagonist had just collected 1,000,000 points. He happily shook his token, thinking this would last a while. After that, he headed straight for the harbor. He used his token to activate a flying vessel parked by the docks, arriving at the transmission peak in just half an hour. The peak master saw this and knew he was heading for the library. He raised an eyebrow, noting the boy wasn't entirely stupid. However, he felt the boy was overestimating himself. In this sect, only the first floor of the library can be opened with points. Accessing the other floors depends entirely on one's talent. Naturally, the best techniques and divine powers are stored on the highest levels. He recalled how Holy Maiden Xiao, with her Wanxia Dao body, reached the 8th floor when choosing her cultivation method. She was equal to Holy Sun Li Zhengyun. This little thief, however, had such poor talent he might struggle with even the first floor. The elder's words were blunt, but to be perfectly honest, they were the absolute truth. Inside the Tai sect library, a massive array of righteous laws and cultivation techniques hummed with ancient power. One must rely on a talent assessment to climb the tower and claim a technique. It is a rigorous process. The laws set by the ancestors match a cultivator's potential perfectly. No one has reached the 9th floor in 1,000,000 years. While the elders were lost in their thoughts, we see Shi landing at the entrance of the library. The moment he touched his token to the stone tablet at the gate, 10,000 contribution points were instantly deducted. Suddenly, a system notification chimed in his ear. He had reached the library, and the introductory quest was complete. The rewards were issued. His new task was to practice any technique and reach the Qi refining realm. Upon completion, he would receive a mastery voucher. Using it would allow any technique to reach the small success level in one day. Shi looked suspicious, wondering if the reward had actually been issued. He didn't feel any different at all. He questioned if his talent had really increased 10,000 times, or if the system was just tricking him. The system remained silent. He decided the only way to be sure was to test it himself, and picking up a random manual, he found he could understand it at a single glance. Even the core concepts that had baffled him before were now perfectly clear, and once he confirmed this, our protagonist was overjoyed. His talent had truly increased, and since the body tempering stage is the foundation of all cultivation, his choice of technique was now vital. With his talent boosted 10,000 times, he was determined to practice only the best. The manuals on the first floor simply wouldn't do anymore. At that moment, he had only one thought, to go upstairs. Meanwhile, back in the Tai void, the various elders were busy passing judgment. The boy has entered the library, they noted, wondering how many floors he could climb. The transmission peak elder let out a cold snort. He remarked that if the pavilion had a basement, the boy would be stuck there, a joke that made the others burst into laughter. But just as they were laughing, the figure on the first floor began to move, instantly capturing everyone's full attention. They wondered if he actually intended to climb to the second floor, grumbling that this thief was being greedy after stealing so many points. They told themselves to ignore him, certain that the stairs to the second floor would stop him. To be honest, they expected a quick failure. The elder who had just joked about the basement felt a bit of a sting to his pride as he watched the scene unfold. The group fell into a collective, awkward silence, though Shi had no idea he was providing such high-quality entertainment for his superiors. After reaching the second floor and browsing a few techniques, he found them quite ordinary, with the best being only at the earth rank. He realized he would have to keep climbing, and as he moved upward again, the elders watching from above began to frown in confusion. While they were still doubting him, we see Shi stepping onto the third floor, a sight that left the observers quite startled. Their interest was piqued, and much of their earlier prejudice began to evaporate as they watched his progress. One elder even mused that if the boy truly possessed such talent, perhaps his death sentence could be commuted after all. He thought that after a bit of punishment, the boy could be properly taught. But just as that thought crossed his mind, he watched as Shurchi climbed higher and higher, reaching the 6th floor without any resistance, leaving the entire group utterly shocked. One must remember that many of these elders only reached the 6th floor in their youth. The Heavenly Secret Elder turned to look at Su Wuxuan. Junior brother Su, could it be that the laws of your library have failed? The transmission peak master immediately shook his head, insisting it was impossible. The library was built by the founding ancestor, Tai Daozuan, himself. It isn't like the current Tai Void, which has been recently disturbed. He maintained there was no way the laws had failed. Hearing this, the Heavenly Secret Elder raised an eyebrow and asked how he explained the situation. How could Shurchi reach the 6th floor? Faced with the question, the transmission peak master was at a loss for words, considering the boy's history. The fact that someone who couldn't even touch the threshold of body tempering after 6 months could reach the 6th floor left everyone utterly baffled. They felt that if he truly possessed such talent, it couldn't have been hidden. Even with minimal effort, he should have mastered the basic techniques. With a special constitution, he might have even entered the way automatically. To be honest, the current situation defied all common sense. But the sect leader wasn't dwelling on those contradictions. Seeing the scene unfold, he actually began to feel a sense of appreciation for the boy. At that moment, the transmission peak master also stroked his beard thoughtfully, his earlier coldness beginning to melt away. He noted that despite the chaos, the boy had maintained his composure even when facing a suddenly empty and silent sect. This was a sign of great character, as the saying goes. One who carries thunder in his chest but remains calm can lead an army. Such a rare, unpolished gem only needed careful carving to become a pillar of the sect in the future. Yes, a pillar indeed. He remarked that since the other elders were busy, he, Su Wuxuan, was willing to share the sect's burden once they were out of danger. He offered to take Shurchi as a personal disciple and teach him himself. Hearing this, the other core disciples all looked on with envy. After all, the Tai sect has many followers, and for the transmission peak master to offer personal tutelage was a rare honor indeed. Usually, only inner and core disciples hear a lecture once a month, and only a few top elites might get a moment of private guidance. It was nothing compared to the prestige of being a peak master's personal disciple. However, unlike the envious disciples, the other elders weren't impressed. The various peak elders rolled their eyes in unison. This old fellow, they thought, certainly knows how to change his tune quickly. Then, Lu Daojia, the Heavenly Palace peak master, stepped forward. He turned to Su Wuxuan and remarked on his keen eye for talent. He added that although he himself was modest, he too saw that the boy's character and potential were of the very highest caliber. He suggested that junior brother Su should simply stay out of it, offering to take over the boy's lessons himself. As Lu Daojia delivered this sudden speech, Su Wuxuan listened to the first half with a look of genuine surprise. He spoke of how all the brothers should nurture the true disciples, but then added that he had to disagree with Su on one point. He pointed out how hard Su had worked for the sect over the years, pouring out his blood and sweat teaching countless disciples daily. On top of that, he frequently had to provide private guidance to the elite disciples. After all, even masters are only human. He claimed that while the other brothers might stay silent, he simply couldn't allow Su to take on more, insisting he step aside. Regarding the boy's tutelage, he declared he would handle it. It was quite a performance from Lu Daojia. While Su Wuxuan was moved by the first half of the speech, he soon realized his brother was actually trying to steal his potential disciple. But he wasn't about to hand over such a prize so easily, and he managed to squeeze out a few crocodile tears for brother Daojia. He recalled how Daojia had cared for him since childhood, and after thousands of years of kindness, it was time to repay the debt. He argued it wasn't stubbornness, but rather that the Heavenly Palace peak required far too much specialized talent in chi refining. While Shurchi's cultivation aptitude seemed decent enough, that didn't mean he had the specific gifts required for their complex arts. If the boy turned out to be untalented in that specific field, it would be a waste of everyone's time. It would force his brother to spend even more of his precious time on basic instructions, and the Heavenly Palace was already far too busy. He asked dramatically if he was expected to just stand by and watch his dear brother work himself to death over a new student. Therefore, he insisted that taking Shurchi as a disciple was a burden he, as a junior brother, must shoulder alone. Lu Daojia caught the hidden meaning immediately and felt a surge of anger at Su Wuxuan's sudden lack of integrity. Just as he was preparing a sharp rebuttal, the calm voice of a woman suddenly drifted into their heated conversation. She asked why her two junior brothers were squabbling over such a small matter, urging them not to ruin their harmony. We see the crowd turn toward the voice, finding a beautiful woman in purple Taoist robes approaching the group. This was Yu Xiao, the master of the Hidden Sword Peak. Both Lu Daojia and Su Wuxuan immediately bowed to her with deep respect. They greeted Sister Yu formally. Seeing this, the sect leader sighed in relief, thinking that at least Sister Yu was sensible. He was glad she had stepped in to stop these two old men from making a scene in front of so many disciples. But just as he was feeling comforted, he watched as Yu Xiao looked at the two of them with a bright, knowing smile. The sect leader's eyelids twitched as the two elders froze. It seemed Sister Yu had joined the race to claim the boy too. Now that she had started it, the other elders began to feel tempted, while the true disciples started whispering among themselves. One wondered why he, who also reached the 6th floor, wasn't chosen as a personal disciple. These things require more than just talent. It also requires timing, and one could only say that Shang-Chi's luck was truly extraordinary. Today, everyone was focused on the secret realm. Because they were forced to watch him, even his smallest movements were being magnified 1,000 times over. Naturally, this made it easy to catch Elder Yu's attention. Meanwhile, Su Wuxuan and Lu Daojia had finally fallen silent. They exchanged frantic glances for a long time, but to be honest, neither of them dared to argue with their senior sister. While they hesitated and other elders considered stepping in, an inner sect deacon suddenly arrived with urgent news. The other disciples trapped inside the realm were becoming restless. After a moment of thought, the sect leader made a decision. He decided to tell them the truth and made the realm's barriers transparent so the disciples could see the outside world. He hoped this would distract them. And so, under the gaze of thousands of pairs of eyes, the boy finally moved again. After reading several secret manuals on the 6th floor, he simply shook his head as if he were unimpressed with the selection. It seemed the techniques on this level didn't satisfy him as he looked up toward the stairs leading to the 7th floor. Then, he simply started walking up. At that sight, the entire Tai sect erupted into a complete frenzy. We should note that the gap between the 6th and 7th floors is a massive watershed, requiring vastly different levels of talent. Most of the peak masters and elders present only had the talent to reach the 6th floor. To reach the 7th was another matter entirely. Only the sect leader and Yu Xiao, the master of Hidden Sword Peak, had reached it, and everyone was certain Shang-Chi was just an ordinary mortal. In the entire history of the Tai sect, there had never been a record of a mortal body ascending to the 7th floor. At that moment, Shangguan Siyuan, the master of Tianji Peak, regained his composure and noted that this was Shang-Chi's first time in the library. He suggested the boy was simply testing his limits and would surely retreat once he faced the difficulty. Hearing this, the others nodded in agreement. A short while later, Shangguan Siyuan wore an expression that said, "I told you so," as Shang-Chi reached the middle of the staircase. He predicted the boy was likely struggling just to stay upright, and the others chimed in, agreeing that taking another step would be a problem. They felt his reasoning was sound, but meanwhile, halfway up those stairs, Shang-Chi was exhausted and cursing the design in his head. He wondered who had designed these stairs, as climbing from the 6th to the 7th floor required a staggering 80 steps. He realized why a 200-meter building only had 9 floors. It was filled with endless stairs, a choice he found quite absurd. In reality, when the Tai Exalted One built this tower, he designed it specifically for the standards of those in the Radiant Body realm. He never imagined a mortal would ever reach such a height. Yet after a brief rest, our young hero finally continued his ascent. With only 20 steps left to reach the 7th floor, he had no idea that his simple movements were causing quite a stir above. The elders in the sky were once again left speechless, forcing the master of Tianji Peak to cough awkwardly with a reddened face. He remarked that Shang-Chi was tougher than imagined, but insisted that reaching the 7th floor remained an absolute impossibility. There was no precedent in the sect's history, and by his calculations, Shang-Chi's physical pressure must have already reached its breaking point. We see the boy gasping for breath, and the elder assumed it wasn't just his bones and muscles that were screaming in protest. He believed even the boy's internal organs were enduring immense pain, concluding that he wouldn't be able to take another single step. Hearing this final judgment, the other elders scrambled to agree once more, praising junior brother Shangguan for his supposedly keen insight. They observed that while he couldn't reach the 7th floor, his talent as a mortal already placed him among the sect's top geniuses. But just as the elders were deep in their grand discussion, something happened that would once again prove them entirely wrong. Suddenly, a core disciple cried out that Shang-Chi was moving, and everyone looked down to see him darting forward like a blur. His figure practically flew to the top of the stairs, stepping firmly onto the 7th floor, and a heavy silence fell over the group. After a long pause, no one could remain calm anymore, and Yu Xiao felt even more determined to take the boy as her personal disciple. The sect leader of Tai was visibly trembling with excitement, amazed that a mere mortal body could actually reach the 7th floor. He declared that this act had opened a new chapter in history, adding a peerless genius to their sect's long legacy. He ranked the boy among the top 10 core disciples immediately, telling the other masters there was no longer any need to argue. He announced that once they were freed, Shang-Chi would join his own lineage to be taught personally, a statement that stunned the listeners. The elders were aghast, wondering why even the sect leader was now jumping into the fray to snatch the boy for himself. You see, the Tai sect had an iron rule. The sect leader could not take extra disciples beyond the Holy Son and Holy Daughter. This was partly due to his busy schedule, and partly to prevent any rival disciples from threatening the sect's established succession. Yet now, the sect leader was willing to break tradition for Shang-Chi, and though the elders were shocked, deep down they understood why. After all, Shang-Chi had shattered the limits of what a mortal body could achieve, making his future potential truly impossible to estimate. Hearing this, Yu Xiao shot an angry glare at the sect leader, whose face began to burn with embarrassment under her gaze. He knew his position was sensitive and that he was overstepping his bounds. Feeling guilty, he didn't even dare to look her in the eye. Finally, Shangguan Siyuan spoke up to offer some counsel, urging his senior brother to think twice before making such a drastic decision. He argued that such a precedent had never existed, and if the rule were broken, it would surely unsettle the holy son and daughter. The other elders quickly chimed in to support this reasoning, but just as they were all trying to dissuade him, the leader spoke again. Sect leader Peng Qianyang spoke with absolute finality, telling them all that there was no need for such concern. He declared that once he took Shi as his disciple, he would simply hand over all his sect leader authority to junior sister Yu Xiao. As those words echoed, everyone fell into a stunned silence, while Yu Xiao could only stare at leader Peng in utter disbelief. "Are you trying to kill two birds with one stone?" she asked, leaving everyone confused while sect leader Peng's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't expected Yu Xiao to see through his little scheme so easily, reminding us of the days when they were both candidates for leadership. Back then, Yu Xiao had voluntarily stepped down from the race, allowing him to inherit the position of sect leader unchallenged. But after 1,300 years of heavy administrative burdens, Peng Qianyang's cultivation had completely stalled, and to be honest, he was exhausted. He saw this new disciple as the perfect excuse to retire, but such a clever trick could never stay hidden from his senior sister. While the elders remained utterly lost, the disciples watching from below saw something else entirely, a leader willing to quit for a genius. By the time the news reached the outer sect, it had been distorted into wild rumors that the deacons were forced to suppress. Even the deacons wondered if the sect leader was truly stepping down just for Shi's sake, or if there was more to it. With these thoughts in mind, we returned to the 7th floor of the library, where the focus of all this drama was currently standing. Shi stood before the shelves with his hands behind his back, calmly inspecting the jade slips containing Earth-grade techniques and above. At this level, traditional scrolls were replaced by these jade slips, and normally, a disciple could only choose one to study at a time. Golden inscriptions beside each slip explained the rules, but since no one was there to guard him, he felt no need to follow them. To be perfectly honest, he wasn't even impressed by these Earth-grade techniques now that his talent had been boosted 10,000 times over. He knew he had to reach the heavenly sovereign realm within 3 years to survive the coming great catastrophe. These techniques simply weren't enough. After scanning the available slips, he couldn't help but sigh, reflecting on the 6 months since he had first crossed into this world. Back then, as a lowly outer sect trainee, no one had bothered to explain the complexities of the different cultivation realms to him. Consequently, he had no real concept of what those ranks meant or the true nature of the world he now inhabited. It was only now, wandering through this library, that he realized he was in a high-level world where power could defy the heavens themselves. Through sheer will and the constant refinement of the human body, mankind had created a martial arts system to dominate the world. This path was divided into 3 major stages, each separated by bottlenecks that were notoriously difficult for any cultivator to break through. The first stage is the key to a mortal's transformation, with the body-tempering realm serving as the foundation for everything that follows. One can then strive for the bone-refining realm, where the strong rival nature itself, while heavenly sovereigns are rare geniuses of the world. As he recalled the knowledge gathered from the library, he felt a deep sense of shock, finally realizing the system's true requirements. The goals were, to be honest, quite ridiculous, but his priority now was choosing a body-tempering technique to finally begin his journey. Since the people of the Tai sect seemed to have vanished for the moment, he decided that if he practiced, it had to be the best. With that thought in mind, he continued upstairs, his heart filled with the hope of finding a truly top-tier cultivation technique. He climbed all the way to the 8th floor in one go, where the space remained vast, though the jade slips were far fewer. He immediately began his research to see if anything was worth his time, completely unaware of the chaos he was causing outside. His actions had sent the entire sect into a frenzy, with disciples shouting in disbelief that Shi had actually reached the 8th floor. They wondered if Brother Shi was even human, marveling at how a mortal with a sword could enter the library's highest levels. If the sect leader himself hadn't revealed this vision of the lower realm, many would have suspected they were being deceived. It was now clear why the sect leader was willing to resign to take him as a disciple. His earlier impulse now looked like genius. The disciples realized their own shallow judgment, seeing that Shi truly had the potential to challenge the Holy Sun for his position. While the elders were flushed with excitement, the Holy Sun felt his world go dark, his face turning pale at the sight. Since both he and Shi possessed the talent to reach the 8th floor, his status as the Holy Sun would likely be reevaluated. However, he quickly told himself that while Shi's talent was impressive, the boy was still far too young and inexperienced. Shi hadn't even begun his formal cultivation path yet, while he was already at the peak of the God-severing realm, a massive advantage. Furthermore, the newcomer lacked both seniority and connections, making it unlikely he could ever truly claim the Holy Sun's throne. He believed Shirchi's only edge was that strange mortal body, whereas his own lunar holy body was powerful and mysterious. Because his path was rare, he had joined the Tai sect specifically for its deep heritage, eventually finding his match on the 8th floor. He eventually found a low-grade heaven rank technique that suited him perfectly, yet only after practicing did he learn the truth. This technique was merely a simplified, substitute version of a much greater power, the high-grade heaven rank Azure Spirit Dragon Art. The original was hidden away on the 9th floor of the library, and though he was destined never to reach it, he remained proud. He reasoned that Shirchi was only at his level on the 8th floor, while naturally remaining 3 entire realms behind him. And so, the Holy Son, Li Jingyun, regained his confidence, convinced that his position was no longer under any real threat. With a renewed sense of superiority, he struck a profound pose, looking down upon the vast landscape of the sect below. We see Shirchi continuing his search on the 8th floor, where the jade slips all emit a soft, mystical glow. He recalled the secrets he had read downstairs, that heaven-rank techniques are not just profound, but truly unique in this world. Legend says that when such a technique is born, it carries a fragment of the creator's own will within it. Hidden deep within the jade slips, these techniques develop a form of spiritual sentience over long periods of time. The top-tier arts might even choose their own masters, and the glowing light before him was a clear sign of that spiritual energy. After walking a full circle, he was drawn to the brightest jade slip of all and picked it up for a closer look. The earthly hidden art was certainly impressive, but to be honest, he simply had no interest in soul cultivation techniques. He casually tossed it aside, completely unaware that this simple gesture made the Holy Son's eyelid twitch in pure frustration. The very technique he took such pride in was treated as worthless by a mere mortal, and his composure began to crack. He found himself struggling to breathe, cursing inwardly at the low-born commoner who clearly had no eye for true value. He watched with bitter curiosity, eager to see what kind of technique Shirchi would actually end up choosing after such a rejection. Meanwhile, Shirchi began to wander the 8th floor with his hands behind his back, finding nothing that truly suited his needs. Surprisingly, the travelogues and miscellaneous records caught his interest more than the actual cultivation manuals did. These scrolls contained basic intelligence on this world and its various factions, which he enjoyed reading simply to broaden his horizons. After finishing those records, Shirchi stepped toward the stairs, certain that the finest techniques, the true heritage of the Tai sect, awaited on the top floor. With a light and brisk pace, he began his ascent, completely unaware that his simple decision was about to send shockwaves through the entire sect. This move utterly stunned the observers watching from the peaks, who found themselves asking how it was possible for him to keep climbing. Some wondered if they were hallucinating as Shirchi took the stairs 2 at a time, heading straight for the legendary 9th floor. They began to question if the library's testing formations had simply broken, as such a feat seemed entirely impossible for a commoner. 1,000,000 years ago, a genius with a divine body reached the top, but for Shirchi, a mere mortal, to attempt the same was unthinkable. After a brief, noisy uproar, the entire sect fell into a heavy silence, every eye fixed solely on that lone figure ascending the stairs. Even the 3 supreme elders, usually detached from worldly affairs, couldn't resist sending a sliver of their divine sense down to watch him. Under the watchful gaze of the entire sect, we see Shirchi easily step onto the 9th floor, and in that moment, the silence shattered. An absolute clamor erupted across the Tai sect. A man with a mortal body had actually reached the very pinnacle of the library. To be honest, witnessing a miracle that hasn't occurred in 1,000,000 years left everyone convinced that Shirchi defied all logic. It seemed certain that once the sect's crisis passed, he would rise to the top and become the most sought-after disciple for every elder. He was truly the envy of everyone. Yet just as the sect began to heap praise upon him, a discordant note was struck. An elder named Su Wuxuan suddenly sent a message of confession, claiming that a certain formation in the library had recently malfunctioned. He admitted that after reporting the issue, he had secretly pocketed the high-grade spirit stones intended for the repair. By using inferior stones instead, he feared the talent testing formation had truly failed, a statement that instantly drained the air from the room. The scene fell deathly silent as the other elders turned to look at Su Wuxuan in utter disbelief and shock. Finally, the elder of Tiangong Peak spoke up to argue, telling his brother not to speak such nonsense about their sacred library. He reminded them that the formation was built by the sect founder himself and contained a fragment of his own law. It wouldn't fail easily. Su Wuxuan bowed toward the sky, noting that while he wouldn't dare question the founder, time itself is often a heartless thing. He argued that even the strongest gods cannot defeat time, and in this world, nothing can truly claim to be eternal. After millions of years, even the library's formations might falter. Perhaps a few misplaced spirit stones were all it took. If the testing efficiency had truly failed, it would explain everything, and hearing this, the others began to snap out of their shock. After all, Shirchi hadn't even managed body tempering in 6 months, yet here he was, supposedly reaching the 9th floor. Breaking the limits of mortal talent so many times seemed impossible. If the formation was broken, then everything finally made sense. The Holy Son, hearing these words, suddenly felt his confidence return. It was all just a ridiculous misunderstanding, apparently. His lunar divine body was still the greatest in the world, while the sect leader began looking for someone to blame for this mess. He ordered Elder Su to get out and report to the Hall of Discipline, just as the crowd began to feel the sting of embarrassment. But then, Yu Xiao looked at the sect leader with a faint smile and noted that he clearly didn't intend to take Shi as a disciple anymore. Since the sect leader was backing out, Yu Xiao claimed the right to take him instead, a statement that left everyone stunned. A moment later, the Tai sect leader seemed to wake up, realizing that Shi's talent didn't actually seem fake at all. Su Wuxuan quickly pressed him, asking if he was certain the formation hadn't failed, and the sect leader let out a long breath. He admitted he couldn't be certain, but confessed that they had all been far too narrow-minded in their judgment today. He realized that to truly see a person's talent, one shouldn't have to rely solely on the library's mechanical tests. As if a revelation had struck, the others instinctively recalled the scene where every jade slip glowed as Shi reached the 8th floor. That was the recognition of the heaven-ranked techniques themselves, and once they realized this, the elders quickly changed their tune again. They praised the heavens that it wasn't a mistake, claiming they had seen Shi's peerless talent from the very beginning. They declared Shi to be the supreme Kirin son of the Tai sect, a title that made the watching disciples' faces twitch in disbelief. Their minds were racing. One moment it's fake, the next it's real, and they wondered if the elders were just playing a joke on them. Meanwhile, our newly dubbed Kirin son had just stepped onto the 9th floor and began calmly observing his new surroundings. We see that the 9th floor of the scripture library has no shelves or miscellaneous books, only dozens of jade slips floating in midair as Shi takes his first step. The slips initially fall into a collective silence, sinking slightly, before suddenly erupting in a brilliant light and racing to surround him. This scene leaves the watching elders utterly speechless. It seems the saying that a technique chooses its master is more than just a legend. The Holy Son immediately spots the Qingming dragon transformation art, yet the technique itself is floating behind Shi like a devoted follower. Shi, however, doesn't give it a second thought, a sight that makes the Holy Son grit his teeth while the Tai sect leader marvels in silence. He realizes that this is the true power of a mortal body with infinite potential, a future that will surely be without limits. In a brief trance, the sect leader can almost see a peerless genius about to emerge and shake the world. Several different cultivation plans immediately begin to form in his mind, and with his decision made, he takes a decisive step forward. The sect leader bows toward the depths of the Tai peaks, addressing the 3 supreme elders to report his findings. He declares that since Shi's talent is so staggering, he intends to place the boy into the sect sequence. This would grant him a status above both the Holy Son and Holy Daughter, ensuring the sect pours every resource into his growth once they are free. This announcement sends a shockwave through the crowd, though the elders simply sigh, knowing the sect leader would eventually make this choice. The sect sequence is an ancient system from the era of Great Wars, designed to organize the most promising disciples into a competitive hierarchy. It forces them to struggle against one another until a final victor emerges as the first sequence, standing above all other disciples. In times of peace, this aggressive system was replaced by the gentler twin saints positions, as the old ways were deemed too radical. By restarting the sequence now, the sect leader is clearly treating Shi as the successor, which naturally makes the Holy Son very nervous. The 3 supreme elders do not respond immediately, seemingly deliberating in private, while everyone else waits breathlessly for their verdict. But just then, a sudden commotion erupts from the outer area, and the elders quickly sweep the scene with their divine sense. It turns out Shi is making another move. As he prepares to select a technique, the system's voice suddenly rings out in his mind. It congratulates him for reaching the top floor and breaking the mortal limit, triggering a special bonus guide mission reward. He receives a one-time fusion voucher, and after a brief moment of confusion, he begins to understand exactly how this powerful tool works. This item allows multiple techniques to be fused and upgraded, though the success rate of such a fusion is far from guaranteed. The odds of success drop as the grade of the techniques increases, and in this world, every heaven-grade manual is entirely unique. To attempt a fusion, the original jade slips must be destroyed. If it fails, the knowledge within those manuals vanishes forever. Since mastering them is so difficult, destroying heaven-grade manuals is considered a capital crime against the legacy of the martial arts world. Shi hesitates at the thought, but the system immediately responds, urging its host to trust in its divine capabilities. It reminds him that everything is designed to help him survive the great catastrophe coming in 1,024 days. Time is simply too short. Even with a 10,000-fold talent, reaching the rank of heavenly venerable in such a brief window by practicing standard techniques is nearly impossible. To save himself, he must create a technique stronger than any heaven-grade manual currently known to exist in this world. His heart races at the suggestion, but since the system has already paved the way, he sees no reason to turn back now. Following the fusion process he memorized back on the second floor of the library, he begins to circulate his energy to start the ritual. In the next heartbeat, every heaven-grade jade slip on the floor rushes toward the white vortex, swirling in front of him. The system confirms the use of the one-time fusion voucher, though Shurchi is blissfully unaware of the chaos he is causing elsewhere. Inside the Tai void above, the elders are watching with fury, and the sect leader's eyes are now filled with a murderous chill. He declares that by destroying the Tai legacy, Shurchi has committed an unforgivable sin that must be punished by death. Elder Yu from the Discipline Peak steps forward, suggesting to the sect leader that the boy's actions are far too calculated. He suspects Shurchi might be a spy sent by a rival power specifically to sever the sect's ancient heritage in one fell swoop. The elder from the Herb Peak coldly agrees, noting that whether he is a spy or simply a fool, the damage is already done. He argues that unless the boy is reduced to ashes, the sect will never be able to satisfy the public's demand for justice. Yu Xiao sighs deeply, feeling a pang of regret as he watches Shurchi attempt to fuse 37 heaven-grade techniques into one. The success rate for such a feat is practically zero, and it seems our top genius has finally run out of ways to save himself. Down below, the disciples are fueled by a growing rage, wondering how he could possibly dare to melt down every heaven-grade manual in the pavilion. The Tai sect may not be a royal court, but it is a unified body, and since he joined to learn their ways, he owes them his loyalty. Even if he wasn't grateful, he shouldn't have betrayed them like this. To be honest, many of those who admired Shurchi just moments ago are now feeling quite foolish. Their worship has turned to disgust, and they now view Shurchi as an eternal sinner within the world of martial arts. Meanwhile, the Holy Sun listens to the curses echoing around him, feeling a bit dazed by how quickly the tide has turned. 1 second, Shurchi was the sect leader's favored prodigy, and the next, he's become a pariah, all while the Holy Sun did absolutely nothing at all. He realizes he has somehow regained his standing without lifting a finger, and a smug smile begins to creep across his face. But just as he prepares to reclaim his arrogance, he remembers how many times things have backfired before. He wonders if this is another false alarm. Deciding to be cautious, he chooses to observe a bit longer, first glancing down at the situation unfolding within the sect grounds. We see Shurchi with his hands held wide, still performing the fusion ritual as the 37 jade slips are mostly dissolved into the light. The Holy Sun begins to relax, feeling certain of the outcome, and turns his gaze toward the sect leader high above. High above, a massive, blurred face made of spiritual energy begins to manifest, its overwhelming presence crushing the very air of the world below. The sect leader's own figure looks tiny by comparison as the giant face lets out a single, thunderous word, die. It seems the Supreme Elder is truly enraged, and Shurchi's fate appears sealed. Yet, just as the Holy Sun begins to celebrate in secret, a sudden burst of brilliant spiritual energy explodes from the library pavilion, sending rays of divine light piercing through the clouds. Layers of auspicious light bloom around the 9th floor, and at this sight, everyone in the Tai sect is frozen in absolute shock. The sect leader stares down in total confusion at the figure below, unable to believe that a mere mortal could achieve the impossible. Against all odds, the fusion of 37 heaven-grade techniques has actually succeeded, and just as the sect leader stands there dazed, a steady, calm voice suddenly echoes through the air, breaking the stunned silence of the crowd. He looks up to see that massive face on the dome dissolve into a stream of light, descending before him in the blink of an eye. The light condenses into a white-haired figure. This is the Supreme Elder, Lan Zhong, and the sect leader immediately bows in greeting. Lan Zhong waves his hand dismissively, telling the sect leader there is no need for such formalities between them. His gaze then falls below, noting that this boy is truly extraordinary. He clearly has no cultivation and has never practiced these arts before. Yet, somehow, he seems to know the core essence of every single one of these 37 heaven-grade techniques by heart. He has even managed to trigger a heavenly phenomenon before the fusion process has fully concluded, a feat that is quite unheard of. Lan Zhong wonders if a peerless genius truly exists in this world, prompting the sect leader to lean in and whisper a cautious question. He asks if it is possible that the boy is the reincarnation of a great power, or perhaps possessed by some ancient monster. Lan Zhong considers this for a moment before shaking his head, explaining that if a soul remains intact, there is no need for such desperate measures. And if the soul had already withered away, there would be no chance for reincarnation or possession to occur in the first place. He concludes that unique people simply do unique things, and there is no need for alarm, though the crowd below feels very differently. The elders and disciples are shaken to their core. It seems Shurchi is truly something else, having survived a crime that should have cost his life. Against all logic, he actually succeeded in the fusion method, turning a death sentence into a miracle right before our eyes. Even the Supreme Elder has personally descended to confirm that he isn't some old monster in a young man's body. He achieved this purely through his own martial talent, a fact that is, to be perfectly honest, completely mind-boggling to everyone present. Just then, Elder Yu from the Discipline Peak speaks up, nervously asking the Supreme Elder if they are still going to execute Shi. The sect leader's face darkens instantly as he barks at Elder Yu to stop talking such nonsense immediately. He declares that Shi is the peerless treasure of their Tai sect and the very hope for their future. He asks rhetorically when the Supreme Elder ever mentioned anything about killing him, which is a rather convenient bit of selective memory. Elder Yu freezes, his mouth hanging open to argue, but Elder Shangwan beside him frantically tugs at his sleeve to keep him quiet. He retreats a few steps in silence, casting a cautious glance toward the Supreme Elder, only to find Lan Zhong's expression as calm as ever. The Elder doesn't spare a single look at the other officials. Instead, his entire focus remains fixed on the activity atop the Scripture Pavilion. As we watch, the fusion of all those techniques finally reaches completion, and a brand new jade slip begins to take shape. When the slip emerges from the white mist floating before Shi's chest, a flicker of solemnity passes over Lan Zhong's face. His voice then thunders across the entire Tai sect, declaring that the outer disciple, Shi, possesses both upright character and peerless talent. He announces that after 1,000,000 years, their sect finally has another disciple who has successfully reached the summit of the 9th floor. Therefore, Shi is granted the status of sequence, placing him above the saints as the head of all inner, outer, and core disciples. This order is to take effect immediately once he leaves the secret realm, a revelation that leaves every single disciple utterly speechless. After a brief, stunned silence, the Tai sect erupts into a deafening roar of excitement and disbelief from the crowd. Many feel a sudden wave of regret for ever doubting him, especially after he successfully refined 37 heaven-grade techniques. They wonder who else in history could achieve such a feat, jokingly complaining that senior brother, Shi, nearly scared them to death. Trading every technique on the top floor for a single, upgraded version might seem like a gamble, but the significance is staggering. It means the world's first technique to surpass the heaven grade has just been born right here within the walls of the Tai sect. As tens of thousands of disciples cheer, Shi's reputation soars once again while he gazes happily at the floating jade slip. The fusion method worked perfectly. He realizes that during the process, he actually managed to learn all 37 original techniques. With the system's support, this new, ultimate heaven-grade technique has successfully been brought into existence. It combines the strengths of all 37 arts into one all-encompassing manual, yet it is uniquely designed for a mortal body. Because the requirements for talent are so incredibly high, he is the only one capable of practicing it, a rather exclusive club of one. As the heavenly visions finally fade away, he reaches out to grasp the jade slip, realizing that his plans have changed significantly. He had originally intended to find a simple technique for the body refining stage, but he never expected to trigger such a massive reward. By fusing these arts, he has created a systematic new cultivation method, one he hadn't initially expected much from. He used to think that systematic techniques covering multiple realms were often quite mediocre in terms of power boosts. His original plan, to be honest, was simply to switch to a new specialized technique every time he reached a new realm. However, this ultimate heaven-grade divine art he just forged is different. It covers every stage of cultivation perfectly. With 37 high-tier heaven-grade techniques as its foundation, it pushes the effects of every single realm to the absolute limit. It is easily as powerful as any specialized art. For instance, it has fully absorbed the essence of the great sun furnace body. That particular art was a divine method for tempering the body, and if Shi's calculations are correct, his strength will be immense. At the first level of body refining, his power will likely exceed 10,000 jin, reaching a terrifying level by the 10th stage. Excited by the prospect, he prepares to receive the information, only to see the jade slip begin to glow with a soft, pulsing light. As it connects to his sea of consciousness, he receives a faint initial message from the slip and can't help but smile. It seems the technique wants him to give it a name, so he rubs his chin and considers its origin as a fusion of many paths. Since it gathers the strengths of hundreds of schools into one supreme divine art, it represents the ultimate state of the infinite. He decides to call it the Infinite Tao Treasury, and as the words leave his lips, a heavenly omen descends once more. The jade slip shines brilliantly, manifesting the 4 characters for Infinite Tao Treasury in the air as he nods with satisfaction. He then presses the slip against his forehead, and guided by the spiritual essence within, the full contents begin to transfer. We see the vast stream of information flow into his mind, and once the process is complete, he snaps his eyes open. He is utterly shocked, realizing this technique is far too heaven-defying, as it possesses 3 truly unique characteristics. First, it has no elemental bias, perfectly resolving any conflicts between different types of energy within his body. Second, it has no bottlenecks. The technique circulates automatically at all times, constantly optimizing its own path. Third, it has no weaknesses in divine abilities, allowing him to combine attack, defense, and movement traits with total ease. The technique has even evolved into 3 exclusive divine abilities: the flow of 10,000 laws, the great elephant's true form, and the Tao Eye's true precept. As he reflects on the descriptions of the infinite Tao treasury, his eyes burn with passion, though he soon shakes his head with a sigh. Unfortunately, these 3 divine abilities are still far out of reach, as they can only be cultivated after breaking through the Nirvana realm. The most important thing right now is to enter the body refining realm, so he immediately takes a stance and begins his cultivation. With every breath, he feels the spiritual energy within his body traveling repeatedly along his meridians, causing his muscles to tighten with intensity. His bones and tendons occasionally let out crisp pops, and while he focuses on his training, the elders of the Tai True Void have finally regained their composure. The Supreme Elder, Lan Zhong, has also vanished from the high sky, returning to his task of inspecting the exit of the secret realm. At this moment, Su Wuxuan, the master of the transmission peak, remarks that the 10th sequence has chosen a very fine name for his technique. He notes it has the flair of a supreme divine art and shows great taste, though by now, the others are quite used to his constant shifting of opinions. Elder Lu Daojia of the Heavenly Peak nods in agreement, wondering if the 10th sequence, with his peerless talent and this new technique, can shorten the time needed to enter the body refining realm to under 3 days. Upon hearing this, the other elders join the discussion with great interest. 3 days to reach body refining? In the entire world of cultivation, that would be an absolutely top-tier achievement. In fact, throughout history, there have been fewer than 100 people who achieved it within 10 days. Fewer than 10 have done it in 5 days, and as for those who managed it in under 3, there has only ever been one. They recall the peerless genius from the great eastern wilderness 2 million years ago who suppressed an entire era, only to meet a tragic end. After reaching the peak of the God-transcending realm, he failed his final tribulation and perished under the heavenly lightning. Truly a lamentable fate. Shangguan Siyuan of the Heavenly Mystery Peak then asks what the best records in recent years have been, specifically regarding the current generation. Su Wuxuan sighs and recalls that when the current Holy Sun began his path, it took him over 8 days to enter the body refining realm. The Holy Lady, due to her unique constitution, only needed 6 days. Having said this, he turns his gaze toward the Holy Sun, Li Zhengyun. He asks Zhengyun how long he thinks their junior brother, Shiqi, will actually take to complete his body refining. As those words hang in the air, every eye turns toward the Holy Sun, who hesitates for a long moment before finally offering an answer. He admits that while his junior brother's talent is peerless, he wouldn't dare to guess blindly, noting that progress depends on more than just raw talent. It is a matter of comprehension, and since Shiqi is practicing a top-tier technique, the mental demands are far greater than usual. Naturally, such deep meditation takes time, so it would be perfectly normal if it took him more than 3 days to enter the body refining realm. The elders nod in satisfaction, as the Holy Sun's assessment mirrors their own. After all, a mortal body lacks the innate advantages of special constitutions. It is only natural for the speed to be slower, though they feel confident he should still manage to achieve it within 10 days. Elder Yu Shao finds himself admiring Shiqi even more, and his desire to take the boy as his personal disciple grows stronger by the second. At the same time, a spark of curiosity flickers in his heart. Just how many days will this miracle-working mortal actually need to succeed? Meanwhile, we see Shiqi fully immersed in the infinite Tao treasury, his comprehension reaching incredible heights thanks to his 10,000-fold talent boost. By the 5th cycle, he no longer needs to consciously control his breath or energy paths, and as the night passes, he continues his steady rhythm. After drawing in the very first breath of morning's spiritual energy, his posture suddenly tightens as the system's notification chimes in his ear. He has officially reached the body refining realm, completing the tutorial quest and earning a specialized cultivation reward for his efforts. Deep down, he feels a surge of excitement, but his joy is nothing compared to the shock felt by the elders watching from above. They have just witnessed a mortal reach body refining in a mere 12 hours, leaving the sect leader to mutter to himself in a daze. 12 hours. To be honest, that doesn't just break the record. It completely shatters every historical precedent for the fastest cultivation ever recorded. The sect leader recalls that it took him 17 full days to reach the same stage, a realization that hits him with sudden clarity. He finally understands that the gap between ordinary geniuses and true monsters can be an absolute ocean, leading him to let out a self-deprecating laugh. However, the atmosphere shifts as several elders suddenly furrow their brows, sensing something unexpected in the air. The sect leader falls silent upon hearing their concerns, but in his heart, he can only offer a silent prayer for the young man's future. He hopes that even with standard cultivation and no external help, Shiqi can still achieve a truly extraordinary level of success. Unlike the worried elders watching from above, Shurchi feels absolutely incredible despite having practiced for the entire night. He stretches his arms with excitement, realizing that after 6 months in this world, he has finally touched the realm of the extraordinary. He is no longer a mere mortal, and after taking a moment to adapt, he curiously clenches his fists to test his newfound strength. He wonders where he stands, knowing that if one practices the Great Sun Body Refining Technique, a single arm can exert over 9,000 pounds of force. Breaking the 10,000-pound mark is easy for those with special constitutions, but even as a mortal, his infinite Tao treasury is far superior. He suspects surpassing that limit will be effortless, though he isn't sure where his true ceiling lies, so he decides to head to the Yinwu Hall. Before that, however, he plans to use the system's reward, a martial arts mastery voucher, to master a technique before testing his power. In this world, combat power is built on cultivation methods, martial arts, divine abilities, and magical weapons, with the first two being the foundation. Furthermore, the infinite Tao treasury requires him to refine his body through actual combat with war beasts to truly master the body refining stage. The monsters within the sect's myriad beast peak are perfect for practice, so he begins browsing the 9th floor of the library pavilion. We see him scanning the high-tier heaven-grade martial arts, starting with the Tai Whisk Palm, a style known for its elegant and fluid movements. It doesn't quite seem to suit his style, so he moves on to the heaven-robbing finger, which looks impressive at first glance. However, using a finger technique to brawl with massive demonic beasts feels a bit risky, so he keeps it as a backup and continues searching. Finally, he stops before a floating jade slip that seems to radiate a unique spiritual aura, standing apart from the others. It appears completely indifferent to its surroundings, a quiet confidence, if you will, and he leans in to read the description, the 5 Peaks True Form Punch. This top-tier heaven-grade art uses punch intent to summon the soul of the mountains, making every strike as heavy and unstoppable as a falling peak. It is designed to suppress all things, but it carries a warning. One must possess a force of 10,000 pounds at the first stage of body refining to learn it. A surge of joy washes over him as he reads this, realizing this bold and aggressive technique is exactly what he was looking for. To be honest, it feels as though it were tailor-made for him, even if the 5 sacred mountains of this world differ from those of his past life. While the descriptions might be slightly exaggerated, its power is undeniable, as the strength of the technique scales directly with his own cultivation. For a commoner, this punch might feel like a mere tickle, but in the hands of a god-transcending master, it could shatter the very heavens. The thought of such power brings a smile to Shurchi's face, and without a second thought, he presses the jade slip against his forehead. A flood of profound techniques and cultivation secrets pour into his mind, and a few moments later, he releases the slip with a look of pure satisfaction. He isn't in a hurry to use his mastery voucher just yet. Instead, he leaves the library pavilion with a light step and quickly takes flight. We see him heading straight for the Yinwu Hall at the peak of transmission, but back at the pavilion, his choice has left the elders deeply concerned. The elders of the Tai sect exchange worried glances, wondering why on earth Shurchi would choose such a problematic martial art. The 5 Peaks True Form Punch has sat in the library pavilion for millions of years, and many have tried to master its secrets. Yet, it seems only the 32nd sect leader ever truly succeeded, a man named Song who was blessed with extraordinary talent. He possessed the peerless tyrant body, the perfect constitution for physical cultivation, which allowed him to master the technique's great success stage. Back then, he was invincible, but while the punch's power is unrivaled, the difficulty of learning it is simply staggering. One elder recalls that even sect leader Song never managed to reach the level of perfection before his time was up. In fact, before his passing, Song admitted that he had wasted far too much of his life trying to fully grasp the 5 Peaks True Form Punch. That obsession cost him his longevity. Otherwise, he might have reached the god-transcending realm, leaving the elders to wonder about his final thoughts. Did he regret choosing that peerless technique in his final moments? Well, whatever he felt is now a matter for history. The pressing issue now is why Shurchi would follow that same path, especially since he has only just begun his body-refining journey. For a beginner, a more balanced profound-grade technique would be far more appropriate than this mountain-shattering gamble. The elders are anxious, watching a promising young talent potentially ruin his future through blind ambition, especially the Tai sect leader. He watches with a furrowed brow, lost in thought, knowing that while Shurchi is gifted, he is still operating with a mortal body. Unlike the legendary Song, Shurchi doesn't have the peerless tyrant body to act as a natural foundation for such a heavy technique. This is destined to be an incredibly difficult road to walk, and to be honest, the elders are right to be skeptical. Nearby, Yushao clenches his fists, clearly pained by the thought of watching Shurchi wander down such a treacherous path in his cultivation. After a moment of silence, he turns his gaze toward the gathered elders, his expression heavy with the weight of leadership. As the elders begin to brainstorm ways to help, we return to Shurchi, who remains blissfully unaware of the concern he has caused. He has just arrived at the Yanwu Hall via a flying boat, a place specifically designed for body-refining disciples to test their raw strength. After scanning the various training equipment scattered across the floor, he selects a 10,000-pound stone lock and takes a deep breath. He lifts it with a single hand, hoisting it above his head. He expected a struggle, but to his surprise, it feels incredibly light. Deep down, he is shocked to realize he had underestimated his own power, so he sets the lock down to test even heavier weights. Eventually, he finds he can lift an 18,000-pound stone ball with one arm, a testament to the sheer authority of the Wuji Dao burial. At just the first level of body refining, his single-arm strength has reached 18,000 pounds. The higher the start, the greater the future gains. Every breakthrough will amplify his physical body in all directions, and by the time he reaches the great circle of body refining, the accumulated power will result in a massive leap forward, a realization that brings a confident smile to his face. He tells himself that this is the kind of script a transmigrator deserves. With this strength, he would have been a top-tier disciple. If the sect hadn't been evacuated, he surely would have been named a true disciple. Unfortunately, the Great Tribulation is only 3 years away. Now, he must use every possible means to save himself, and with that thought, he heads toward the interior of the Yanwu Hall's main building. A full day and night of high-intensity reading and cultivation has left him exhausted, and he desperately needs a long sleep to recover. Once he is rested, he plans to master the 5 Peaks True Form Punch before heading to Wanshou Peak to battle demonic beasts. He reviews his cultivation plan in his mind as he enters the building, finding the nearest bed and collapsing onto it. He is soon fast asleep, but meanwhile, the news of his 18,000-pound feat has begun to spread like wildfire. The disciples of the inner and outer gates are in an absolute frenzy, wondering how on earth he lifted that massive stone ball with one hand. They had heard his constitution lacked special abilities, yet here he is, showing such terrifying power at only the first level of body refining. The rumors begin to swirl that Shi truly is the chosen one of the Supreme Elder, having refined his body to 18,000 pounds in a single night. Many wonder if he has already shattered the sect's records, fearing his natural talent might even surpass the greatest geniuses of the noble families. It seems the sacred lands aren't the only places where legends are born. To the outer disciples, Shi has become a true role model. As the night deepens and we see Shi drift into a peaceful sleep, the crowd finds themselves with nothing left to watch, and boredom sets in. The inner disciples have spent decades in meditation and can endure the silence, but the outer disciples are beginning to grow restless. They start to pass the time with idle gossip, though naturally, every conversation eventually finds its way back to our sleeping protagonist. They remark on how surreal yesterday felt, witnessing a divine vision for the first time, though the reality of the situation is even more absurd. Imagine a mere mortal triggering such a phenomenon. They wonder why Shi didn't enter the Tai True Void with the rest of them. Some suspect he has no idea where they've gone, meaning from his perspective, he simply woke up to find the entire sect had vanished. In a way, he is quite lucky. With the sect standing empty, he can use any resource he desires without anyone to stop him. Yes, and since the Supreme Elder has granted him such high status, he could probably tear the buildings down and face no consequences. They joke that the sect master might even praise his strength upon their return, but then a darker thought occurs. What if they never get out? If that happens, Shi will be the one to suffer, living all alone in such a massive sect without a single soul to talk to. He wouldn't even find a pet for company. After a few months, or perhaps decades, the isolation would surely drive a man mad. An elder standing nearby can't help but roll his eyes at their chatter. To be honest, these boys have it all backward. He tells himself that while Shi's fate is uncertain, they will be the ones to lose their minds first if they remain trapped here. With 3 supreme elders present, escape should be certain, yet as he glances toward the depths of the secret realm, he feels a sudden chill. Meanwhile, at the heart of the Tai True Void, the high-level leaders aren't worried about escaping, but rather about how to contact Shi. They are desperate to warn him not to waste his precious time practicing the 5 Peaks True Form Punch, as Su Wuxuan paces back and forth. Transmitting sound via spiritual power has failed, and the heavenly jade is silent. He wonders what other options are left as the night slips away. The elders of the 12 Peaks continue to brainstorm one plan after another, yet not a single one seems reliable. In the end, the barrier laws of the Tai True Void are simply too powerful, creating a boundary with the real world that even they cannot breach. After pulling a long sword adorned with flower petals from her storage realm, Yuxiao lets out a heavy, frustrated sigh. Upon hearing this, Suichimo, the master of the soul-suppressing peak, suddenly experiences a flash of inspiration. As he speaks, the eyes of the crowd light up, knowing that practicing puppetry requires dividing one's divine sense to function. By embedding this sense into a puppet for control, the priority of this technique is incredibly high, comparable to a blood-bound divine weapon. Even across thousands of miles, or through restrictive formations, a connection can be felt, and the Tiangong Peak Elder watches him expectantly. He tells him to try and see if he can reach that pile of scrap metal he calls puppets, before Zuichimo can even get angry. Su Wuxuan frowns at Lu Daojia, asking why his senior brother is always bringing up Zuichimo's shortcomings like that. He notes that it's enough to know the puppets are scrap metal in one's heart without saying it aloud, until the sect master intervenes. The sect master tells junior brother Su to be quiet as well, while Zuichimo, face tense, bows and prepares to begin. With a look of great anticipation, the sect master nods, telling him to try his best, and that failure is perfectly acceptable. Zuichimo nods back, closing his eyes to focus his entire being on the task at hand. Panting and wiping the sweat from his brow, the sturdy Yu Xiao rushed forward to ask his junior brother, Zhua, how things were going. Zuichimo shakes his head, explaining that the barrier laws created by the ancestor are too strong for his divine sense to pass through. While the others feel a wave of disappointment, Zuichimo quickly adds that there is, however, one small puppet beast. He managed to establish a faint connection with a palm-sized Qiongqi he refined back when he first started learning puppetry. Because of his lack of experience, it was a failure, a useless beast, and he had simply tossed it into the soul-suppressing peak warehouse. He explains that while the Tai True Void blocked his connection to all high-level puppets, perhaps the reason for this success was simple. The divine sense required for those puppets is too massive, whereas this failed little beast has such low requirements that the connection held. Because it was a failed prototype, it can't release spiritual energy or cast spells, and the things it can actually do are quite limited. Upon hearing this, the Tai sect master waves his hand dismissively, noting that it doesn't matter as long as it can move. We see that their only goal is to find Shurqi and have this little puppet beast scratch out the situation on the ground. Once that's done, its mission is complete. In the sect master's eyes, whether Zuichimo's puppet has any combat ability is irrelevant. It doesn't even need to transmit sound, as the inner sect is perfectly safe and Shurqi isn't in any real danger anyway. As long as this tiny puppet can be driven to move, it counts as a success, and once it locates Shurqi, the plan is simple. He can just control the beast to right on the ground, and Shurqi will naturally understand the situation once he sees it. The other elders agree with this logic, and Yu Xiao smiles warmly at her junior brother, Zuichimo, urging him on. She tells him to hurry and find Shurqi so the boy can finally give up that Five Peaks true form fist technique. She hopes he'll switch to her own Tai clear light art, but the sect master immediately interrupts her with a sharp remark. He asks Yu Xiao what kind of nonsense she's talking about, insisting that once they reach Shurqi, the boy must follow him. He is certain that the boy should learn the wood-returning heaven technique under his personal guidance. After all, it is the most suitable heaven-tier divine ability for someone starting their cultivation from the jade body stage. It is a rare technique that, once mastered, allows one to regrow flesh and bone even if only a single breath of life remains. Yu Xiao maintains her polite smile, but her tone sharpens as she asks if Sect Master Pang truly means what he's saying. She wonders if he really wants their once-in-a-million-years genius to ignore combat methods entirely. It seems he'd rather the boy focus on how to take a beating and survive, which, to be honest, is a bit of a pessimistic start. Seeing them bickering like this, Zuichimo hesitates before stepping forward to tell his senior brother and sister to stop fighting. He drops a bit of a bombshell. His little puppet beast is physically incapable of writing a single word. The sect master frowns in confusion, and Yu Xiao is equally baffled, wondering why a beast with claws couldn't simply scratch at the dirt. Zuichimo rubs his hands together awkwardly, explaining that he designed the 4 feet as round spheres, which the others will see shortly. We see him activate a hand seal, releasing his divine sense to instantly connect with the storage room on the mountain below. Then, under the bewildered gazes of the group, a round, clunky iron ball comes rolling out of the small storage room door. In the moonlight, its true form is revealed, a tiny, rusty metal Qiongqi beast, no larger than a person's palm. At first glance, it looks like a cheap iron toy, featuring 2 small red rubies embedded where its eyes should be. It has a pair of wings on its back that look like they were made of rags, and legs so short they're almost invisible as it waddles along. Its tail is nothing more than a broken broom. Zuichimo, his face turning red, points out that the poor thing can barely even walk. The entire group is left speechless by the sight, and Shangwan Tun can't help but voice his blunt criticism of the creation. Hearing this, Zuichimo retorts defensively, reminding them that he already said it was a failed prototype from his training. He asks if they don't find the little beast charmingly clumsy, but before a real argument can start, the sect master steps in. He calls for silence, telling everyone to settle down before turning his attention back to junior brother Zhua. He asks how this little beast is supposed to actually meet with Shurqi, prompting Zuichimo to explain immediately. He informs the sect master that while the internal arrays are paralyzed, the wings can still be activated normally. Because of this, it possesses a limited ability to fly, a detail that makes the sect master's eyes light up with relief. Deep down, he is grateful the puppet was modeled after a Qiongqi. Without wings, they would have reached a complete dead end. He quickly gives the order for Zhua to try activating it, suggesting that if it works, they should proceed. He tells him to let it fly toward Chuangong Peak, noting that they will figure out how to communicate with Shi once it arrives. Zuichimo nods and takes the command, immediately splitting off a thread of his divine sense to take control of the puppet. The puppet beast begins flapping its tattered wings to take flight, its round body wobbling precariously through the air. Watching it go, the gathered elders can't help but feel a sense of deep concern for the success of this plan. Zuichimo explains that despite its looks, the puppet is cast from starfall flowing iron, making it sturdy enough to withstand a direct blow. Hearing this, the group finally feels a bit more at ease as time slowly ticks away until the sun is high in the sky. We return to Shi, who finally wakes up and, after a quick wash, begins planning his next steps for cultivation. He walks onto the Yinwu training grounds to warm up, intending to practice the Five Mountains True Form Fist on his own. He wants to see how it feels without relying on the system, but before he can even take a stance, he spots something in the distance. A round, metallic lump comes wobbling through the air toward him, and as the iron ball gets closer, he doesn't hesitate. He delivers a powerful kick, sending the iron ball flying back the way it came. A rather impressive shot, to be honest. High above the sect, the elders are left utterly stunned. They had spent the entire night watching that little puppet fly. It had finally reached Chuangong Peak, only to be kicked away before it could even make formal contact with him. The sect master is the first to snap out of it, urgently shouting for Zhua to make the puppet fly back immediately. He insists they must stop Shi before he starts his training, while Zuichimo nods through gritted teeth. He has been controlling the little Qiongqi all night, and his divine sense connection is growing dangerously weak. He struggles to maintain stable control, and the most critical problem is that he cannot increase his divine power. Doing so would cause the barrier of the Tai True Void formation to sever his connection entirely. Now, he can only focus intensely on those thin threads of connection, trying to guide the puppet back to Chuangong Peak. Meanwhile, Shi rubs his chin, feeling a bit puzzled as he wonders what that strange thing could have been. He recalls the sensation of the kick and the brief glimpse he caught, feeling more certain that his guess was right. Puppet beasts are considered rare in most places, but within the Tai True sect, things are a bit different. Because of the existence of Jinhuan Peak, they aren't exactly unheard of. In fact, he saw one when he first joined. Back then, he had encountered a massive puppet bird in the outer sect, a giant creature forged entirely from steel. Several true disciples who had just returned to the sect were standing on it, and at the time, he naturally had no idea what kind of puppet it was. He only learned about the materials by overhearing some outer sect brothers chatting, which led him to reflect deeply on the diverse cultivation methods of this world. He thought about it for a long time, remembering that puppet beasts were apparently refined using the divine souls of cultivators. They possessed a spiritual nature similar to the jade slips in the library pavilion, so with the sect's evacuation, all puppets should have been taken away. Yet that iron lump had remained behind. He wondered if it had missed the departure just like he did, failing to catch up with the main group. Perhaps it had stumbled upon him by chance and came looking for company, a thought that puzzled him briefly before he decided not to overthink it. After all, it was just a puppet beast, so he shook his head and prepared to begin his practice, but that was exactly when things changed. Out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly saw that same metallic lump reappear on the steps of the training ground, wobbling and rolling toward him. It finally bumped into his shin, causing him to stumble, while its four rounded iron feet kicked wildly in the air. Its broom-like tail kept thumping against the ground, and as Shi blinked in surprise, he reached down to tap the little beast on its head. He immediately fired off 3 questions, asking the old fellow if it had a purpose for finding him or if it knew what had happened to the sect. He even asked if it could understand his words, while at that very moment, the watching elders became incredibly excited by the interaction. The sect master went as far as grabbing Zuichimo's arm, urgently telling him to control the puppet and give the boy a response. Hearing this, Zuichimo hurriedly pushed his divine sense, but the more he rushed, the more unstable the transmission became. As the little beast below remained motionless, Shi's brow began to furrow in suspicion, which only added to the tension. Sweat began to pour down Zuichimo's forehead again, prompting a confused Yushao to ask if simply nodding the puppet's head was really that difficult. Zuo explained that he wanted it to nod, but after flying all night, the puppet's internal stability was completely exhausted. Because of this, many commands were failing to register, leading Lu Daojia to remark with clear disdain that the thing seemed utterly useless. Zuichimo immediately jumped to its defense, offended by the suggestion that his creation was a failure. He pointed out that without his little Qiongqi, they wouldn't have been able to establish even this small amount of contact with Shi. Besides, Zhua argued that it wasn't as if the puppet could do nothing at all. While the command to nod was failing, he had discovered a workaround. He realized that shaking its head was still possible, just as the sect master noticed Shi losing interest and preparing to set the little Qiongqi down. The sect master shouted urgently for him to make it shake its head immediately, a command that left the other elders looking quite pale with shock. They protested that this would only negate the very doubts Shi was beginning to form, but before the sect master could respond, Yushao intervened. Yu Xiao explained that the sect master was right. If they couldn't manage a nod, then a head shake would have to suffice for now. The urgent priority, after all, was simply to let Shih-Chi know that this little beast possessed intelligence and wasn't just some ordinary, mindless puppet. If Shih-Chi chose to keep it by his side because of this, they would eventually find a way to guide him toward the truth of his situation. Hearing this, the realization dawned on everyone that it didn't actually matter whether the puppet nodded or shook its head in that moment. Providing any response at all was the only thing that mattered, and a focused Tsuchimo quickly sent out a new divine sense command. Just as Shih-Chi was about to cast the strange puppet aside, we see the little metallic head begin to wobble slowly from side to side. He stared at the iron beast in utter disbelief, wondering if it truly understood him. To him, that head shake confirmed his suspicions. He concluded that the creature was indeed an abandoned thing, just as clueless as he was about what had happened to the sect. Deep down, he assumed it had only approached him because he was a disciple, hoping to find some sense of security by following him. This time, he didn't kick the little Cheonchi away, which, to be honest, was a significant improvement in their relationship. Since it was the only other moving thing left in the sect, he decided to keep the silly puppet around for company and set it back down. He told the little fellow it could stay, but warned it to move aside so it wouldn't get hurt while he practiced his techniques. The metallic Cheonchi seemed to freeze in a daze, as if struggling to process the meaning of those words, while high above in the secret realm. The elders all let out a collective sigh of relief now that the puppet had successfully secured a place by the boy's side. This meant their only channel of communication remained intact, leading Tsuchimo to ask the group what their next move should be. It was a question that left them all silent, staring at a broken little puppet that couldn't speak, couldn't write, and couldn't even nod. The question remained, how could they warn Shih-Chi not to practice the Five Peaks True Form Fist? Suddenly, Shangwan Siyuan, the master of Tianji Peak, stepped forward. He proposed a plan, suggesting that Junior Brothers Wa could control the little beast to move across the ground in a specific pattern. By using its entire body to trace out the characters, they could convey their message. It might look a bit strange at first, but with enough repetition, they were certain that someone as clever as Shih-Chi would eventually notice the hidden meaning behind the movements. Suddenly, the puppet beast began to dash around as if it had lost its mind, though because its feet were round spheres, it looked more like a frantic scramble. Watching it stumble and roll was enough to leave anyone confused, and even the elders of the Tai sect felt a collective headache coming on. Shangwan Siyuan frowned, criticizing Zhu's clumsy control and asking who on earth could possibly recognize that as writing. Tsuchimo immediately snapped back, telling him to try it himself if he was so confident, noting that the little Cheonchi was already unstable enough. He argued he was doing his best given the circumstances, and just as Shangwan Siyuan prepared to retort, the sect master silenced them both with a glare. After a moment, the sect master asked what exactly Zhuo was trying to write, to which Tsuchimo explained his intended message. He wanted to say, the sect is fine, do not practice the Five Peaks True Form Fist. Hearing this, the sect master shook his head in disapproval. He decided that was far too many words and ordered Zhuo to simplify the message to just 4 characters, do not practice. Tsuchimo immediately followed the order, causing the already abstract scrap metal puppet below to change its movements mid-stride. Before it could even finish the first sentence, it began tracing new characters. At first, it truly looked like the puppet was just malfunctioning. But as we watch, the path the creature takes starts to seem intentional, prompting Shih-Chi to begin observing the patterns with intense focus. The elders grew excited, believing the boy had finally understood, as his natural talent would surely allow him to decipher the writing. They urged Tsuchimo to keep up the performance without letting his divine sense waver for even a single second. Tsuchimo was under immense pressure now. If the little Cheonchi simply had 4 stable legs, riding on the ground wouldn't be so difficult. The real problem was that the puppet's 4 leg joints were unnaturally flexible, which, in this case, was more of a curse than a blessing. He couldn't even manage a simple nod, yet here he was, forced to write complex characters using legs that seemed to have a mind of their own. The goal was simple, trace the words, do not practice on the ground. Now, everything depended on whether Shih-Chi could actually interpret them. We see Shih-Chi watching the puppet's chaotic trajectory with intense focus. After observing for a long time, he finally begins to piece it together. He realizes the creature is actually writing. Even though the strokes are crooked and messy, to be honest, they're a disaster. It is definitely a message. It seems to be the character for medicine. At that exact moment, as Shih-Chi identifies the first word, the atmosphere within the Tai sect shifts. The elders are practically vibrating with excitement. They are convinced Shih-Chi's talent is terrifyingly high for guessing correctly under these conditions. One elder remarks that even knowing the answer, he can't see the word in those scribbles. Shih-Chi truly is a rare genius, it seems. Whether it's his cultivation talent or his sharp mind, Shih-Chi is proving to be in a league of his own. A talent like this is a joy to behold. The elders agree they must guide him onto the right path, believing the future glory of the Tai sect rests entirely on this young man's shoulders. Even the sect master breathes a sigh of relief, his heart finally finding some peace as the plan seems to be working. He reasons that if Shi is clever enough to guess medicine, then surely the simpler characters will be easy for him to recognize. Even if the puppet's writing remains abstract, the sect master believes the core message will eventually get through to him. Of course, it was never going to be a perfect transcription, but given the strange circumstances and the location of the Yanwu arena, the sect master is certain that Shi will be able to achieve a moment of true enlightenment and understanding. If this step succeeds, explaining the sect's current situation or guiding him from a distance will no longer be just a desperate dream. With this thought in mind, the sect master and Yu Shao feel as though the situation is finally under control, or so they hope. Back on the ground, after watching the patterns repeat several times, Shi uses his powerful imagination to reach a bold conclusion. He decides the first word is medicine. He can't quite make out the rest, but he thinks he sees something resembling the word practice. Out of a dozen messy strokes, he managed to guess two. In his mind, that's actually quite an impressive feat of deduction. He feels a sense of accomplishment. To be able to pull any meaning at all from those chaotic movements is a testament to his focus. But he wonders what medicine practice could mean. Perhaps it's a reminder not to be lazy with his training? A logical guess, but quite wrong. The little puppet beast, which had been scurrying about like a rolling gourd, suddenly freezes. Inside the Tai sect, everyone's collective sanity seems to snap. They wonder how he could possibly see the word medicine, but completely miss the word don't right in front of it. The problem, it seems, lies elsewhere. We see them questioning why Shi thinks the puppet drew over a dozen characters when there were only 4. Surely, a genius like him should know better. They conclude that the little Cheongchi puppet wasn't controlled properly. Junior brothers Wachimo, feeling utterly aggrieved, looks at the crowd and defends himself. He explains that he truly did his best. As for why Shi saw a dozen characters, it's because of what was written at the very beginning. It started as a long sentence before they suddenly changed the words midstream, creating this massive misunderstanding. Upon hearing this, the group falls silent. Everyone is stunned for a moment. Su Wuxuan stomps his feet in frustration, unable to believe Shi interpreted the message as must practice. This is, quite literally, the exact opposite of what they were trying to convey. The others are left speechless, not knowing what to say. Just then, Shi's voice drifts up from below. He tells the little fellow that from now on, its name shall be Tai Tai, and that it is absolutely right. He decides that since time is pressing, he cannot afford any more delays. Today, no matter what, he must master the 5 Peaks True Form Fist. The elders couldn't care less about the puppet's new name. Hearing that he's about to start practicing again, they immediately become incredibly nervous. Zuichimo sends a frantic divine command, making the little Cheongchi shake its head desperately. Below, Shi simply smiles at the sight. He tells the puppet he understands it's supervising him to ensure he doesn't slack off. He promises to begin his training immediately. With those words, he begins to practice in earnest, following the understanding of the 5 Peaks True Form Fist stored in his mind. Soon, powerful waves of energy begin to swirl around him. At this sight, the elders' lingering hopes finally die. It's over, he's actually doing it. They lament that this technique takes decades to master. Their million-year genius is about to be derailed by a top-tier, but ultimately distracting martial art. The elders watch the situation below with bated breath. Suddenly, Lu Daojia lets out a startled cry, urging everyone to look closer. Shi has already finished his first full set. For a first attempt, the way the shadows of his fists linger in the air is nothing short of extraordinary. He truly is a once-in-a-million-years talent. Yet, even with such gifts, they believe it will still take him 10 years to achieve basic mastery. It seems the path ahead has taken a very long detour. After a moment of silence, the sect master asks his brothers a heavy question. He asks if there is any other way, but this time, the group is truly out of ideas as Lu Daojia speaks up once more. We see Shi beginning his second repetition, and everyone leans down to watch as his movements become a continuous, unstoppable flow. It is as if he has become completely immersed in the technique, leaving the peak masters and elders to watch his serious practice with heavy hearts. Deep down, they are utterly despairing, and the disciples within the Tai sect look on with equally grim expressions. To be honest, they expected something else. They wanted to witness how fast he could cultivate, but now, seeing him obsessed with this fist technique, they fear the worst. It seems to them that he is stubbornly cutting off his own bright future, leading the true disciples to sigh and shake their heads in disappointment. They whisper about how shallow this top-tier swordsman is, while only the holy son, Li Zhengyun, laughs inwardly at the young Shi. He thinks Shi is ungrateful for his top-tier cultivation method, foolishly trying to master an additional high-grade martial art out of pure greed. He tells himself that this is why Shi's realm remains low, assuming the boy is just a greenhorn willing to waste 20 years on a distraction. Eventually, he believes that Shi won't even have enough time to break through to the soul-refining realm if he keeps practicing like this. In his mind, the final winner will still be himself, but his thoughts are suddenly interrupted by Lu Daojia's puzzled voice. Lu asks the others if they've noticed that Shi's momentum seems to be growing increasingly fierce with every passing second. Upon hearing this, the transmission peak master, Su Wuxuan, observes closely before exclaiming in utter disbelief that it is indeed true. Shichi's mastery is growing so fast it's as if one of his repetitions is worth 10,000 of anyone else's. It makes no sense whatsoever. The other elders, now alerted to the anomaly, take a closer look and realize that the situation is exactly as described. One elder remarks that in his 4,000 years of life, he has never seen such rapid growth. Compared to the first set, this is entirely different. The technique has transformed into something else entirely, a feat that shouldn't be possible in a few hours. They wonder if he has invincible talent in martial arts too. What they don't know, of course, is that the reason for this divine speed is the martial arts mastery voucher he just used. In reality, after finishing the first set with his own talent, Shichi had already felt just how difficult this particular martial art truly was. So, starting from the second round, he smoothly activated his cheat and entered a truly wondrous state of enlightenment. Shichi feels as though his experience gained for everything has been infinitely magnified, and at this rate, he is certain he can reach the minor mastery stage before dusk. With this thought in mind, he executes the fist technique once more as time slowly slips away. As we see him on the verge of reaching minor mastery, the disciples of the Tai sect are left completely and utterly stunned by the sight. Martial arts that would take others decades of grueling practice are being mastered by him in just a few short hours. It is, frankly, a bit ridiculous. Now, as he becomes increasingly proficient with the core principles of the technique, the hidden essence of the mountains and moon within his strikes becomes visible. By the end, every move and every stance is as heavy as a mountain, with a powerful aura that seems to cover the very sky. Seeing this, the transmission peak master, who has spent half his life teaching disciples, begins to sink into a deep state of self-doubt. This simply defies all common sense in the world of cultivation. Even the Holy Sun stands there with a blank expression, repeatedly rubbing his eyes in disbelief. Deep down, he desperately hopes that all of this is just a hallucination, but the gasps of the crowd around him tell a very different story. It is all real. In just a single day, Shichi is about to bring a top-tier heaven-grade martial art to the level of minor mastery. Down on the martial arts field, as he executes the final form, a vast and majestic intent rises toward the heavens. The energy transformed into the phantom image of a mountain moon above him. After a few breaths, he lowered his fists, the sharp steel aura around him remaining perfectly still. With the residual shadows of his strikes still swirling, he exhales a breath of turbid air. He has finally mastered the Five Peaks true form fist. He looks up to see that the sky has already grown dark. He has been practicing since the morning, exactly 8 hours in total. He notes to himself that the system certainly didn't let him down. He really did reach minor mastery in a single day. Just as he prepares to test the true power of the Five Peaks true form fist, a sudden wave of hunger washes over his entire body. He frowns helplessly. He had been practicing for so long that he almost forgot he hasn't eaten a single thing in 2 days. Ever since the day he discovered the sect had vanished, he has been pushed by the system under the constant threat of an impending apocalypse. After sleeping for a day and night upon leaving the pavilion, and then spending today mastering his new technique, he has gone 3 full days without a drop of water. The only reason he hasn't collapsed from hunger is the sheer strength of his cultivated body. Because he was still in the body tempering stage, Shichi quickly pushed aside his other thoughts, deciding it was time to find some food. He needed to rest properly. He knew that only those who reached the Zifu stage or higher could truly transcend the need for sustenance. In contrast, those in the body tempering, soul refining, and god-severing realms require vast amounts of spiritual rice and demon beast meat. To replenish his strength, he immediately hopped onto his flying boat and headed for Wanshou Peak, with little Tai Tai following close behind. He tucked the little creature into his robes and arrived at the Wanshou Peak dining hall, which was widely considered the best in the sect. The peak raised a massive number of demon beasts. The docile ones were trained as mounts, while the fierce ones served a different purpose. The aggressive beasts were used as trials for the disciples, which meant that every single day, many demon beasts met their end on Wanshou Peak. Naturally, the meat from these fallen beasts was never wasted. It was transformed into incredibly delicious and nourishing dishes. Because of this, the meat here was of the highest quality in the sect, occasionally even featuring the flesh of top-tier great demons. We see him arrive at the high-level formation cooking area, where every dish costs upwards of 1,000 contribution points. 3 signature dishes made from god-severing level beasts even exceeded 10,000 points, a staggering level of consumption. To be honest, out of the 100,000 disciples in the sect, only a few hundred could ever afford to dine like this. In the past, as a mere preparatory outer disciple, he was only fit to eat spiritual rice porridge and a few scraps of low-level meat. But now that the entire sect had vanished, he saw no reason to mistreat himself. If he was going to eat, it would be the very best. He pressed his disciple token against the formation stone and began to order frantically, which was quite a sight to behold. In a matter of moments, he had spent 130,000 contribution points, and the formation immediately hummed into action. Half an hour later, 16 exquisite dishes and a massive bowl of spiritual rice were placed before him, and he wasted no time digging in. Under the influence of the digestion techniques from the Wuji Dao treasury, every ounce of essence from the demon meat was perfectly absorbed. He could feel his cultivation growing as he ate, but meanwhile, the disciples watching from above were starting to feel quite hungry themselves. One of them even shouted in desperation, asking if anyone had food to trade for 100 contribution points. And who could blame him, really? But the responses were few and far between, as most had only expected to spend a single day inside the Tai void. Consequently, no one had bothered to pack extra food, and even those who happened to have some in their storage bags weren't foolish enough to trade it away now. When the lower elders realized the situation, they immediately reported it upward. The news quickly reached the sect leader, who only then remembered the disciples' basic needs, since he had long ago transcended hunger. He had subconsciously overlooked such a minor detail. He then turned to the others, asking if any of his fellow brothers had surplus food reserves in their storage rings that could be distributed among the hungry disciples. At the same time, streaks of light flew from his own ring, transforming into various types of food in midair. Seeing this, the other elders began pulling out their own spare rations, though they no longer needed to eat after thousands of years. Their storage rings had accumulated quite a lot of miscellaneous items, and they were able to find some food tucked away. Among them, Tong Zhan, the peak master of Wanshou Peak, made the greatest contribution. The amount of spiritual rice and meat he produced was more than all the other elders combined, enough to feed the disciples for years. To be honest, no one was surprised. After all, Tong Zhan's love for food was famous throughout the central continent. He was the only one of his generation who refused to stop eating. Shangwan Siyuan looked at the food floating in the air and remarked that junior brother Tong truly never failed to meet expectations. The stout and friendly Tong Zhan smiled, noting that being able to eat is a blessing, and luckily, his habit had finally come in handy. The sect leader nodded in agreement, admitting that without junior brother Tong, their combined reserves wouldn't have been enough for everyone. Now they could finally rest easy, even if they were trapped in the Tai void for 3 to 5 years. The disciples would not go hungry. However, as those words were spoken, the mood among the other elders grew quite heavy. 3 days had passed without a word from the supreme elders. It seemed the Tai void was facing a truly massive problem. If they were truly trapped for years, the consequences would be unthinkable, a thought that weighed heavily on the sect leader's heart. It seemed that, no matter the cost, he had to find a way to establish contact with Shurqi. The sect leader mused that if they could use her help to find the spare honey jade, their escape would become much simpler. Afterward, we see her gaze fall upon the young man, noting he had finished his meal, though he still seemed quite unsatisfied. He stood up and began scanning the dining hall once more, as if searching for one last thing worth eating. Meanwhile, Zhuqiuanma had temporarily stopped controlling the small Qiongqi, allowing it to rest quietly within Shurqi's sleeve. At this moment, he asked out of curiosity why the 10th sequence had such a massive appetite, having finished 16 dishes already. Su Wuxuan responded that it was likely due to his cultivation technique, given that the internal Wuji Dao treasury was so vast. It was a divine skill born from refining 37 high-grade Heaven Street techniques, and as we know, the deeper the technique, the more energy it consumes during cultivation. Tong Zhan added his own explanation, noting that Shurqi hadn't eaten in 3 days. After a day of practicing the 5 moons true form fist, his body was so depleted that he was burning energy faster than he could eat. His appetite was naturally enormous, but as the words left his mouth, Tong Zhan's eyes suddenly froze while following the boy's movements. He cried out in alarm that the boy was heading for his storehouse, where a top-grade yumming fish sat waiting to be cooked. At that moment, our protagonist was searching for more sustenance, feeling his cultivation realm steadily growing within him. He had even begun to feel the threshold of the second layer of body tempering, though he deliberately suppressed the breakthrough. He knew that advancing in body tempering required the physical form and spiritual energy to reach a natural point of resonance. Only then would the body receive a true boost, so a cultivator must prioritize tempering their physical strength before the breakthrough. By his rough estimate, his single-arm strength had surpassed 20,000 pounds, and one more meal would change everything. He would surely reach the critical point of his realm, so next, he needed to consume the flesh of a high-grade demonic beast. By using the power of the Wuji Dao treasury to convert that energy into physical strength, he could finally break through. As he was calculating his next move, a crisp, mechanical sound suddenly echoed within his mind with a sharp ding. The system detected his intense craving for high-quality food, triggering an extra guide mission to complete a perfect gourmet meal. The mission was clear: cook and consume high-grade demonic beast meat to earn a purple trait reward called Waste Not, Want Not. While eating the beast's flesh, the digestion effect of his body tempering technique would triple, a prospect that made Shurqi's eyebrows twitch with interest. He hadn't expected a trait reward this time, which sounded excellent, though he knew the task wouldn't be easy to complete. The main challenge was finding high-grade meat, as the criteria for high-grade depended on the creature's bloodline rather than its raw power. The higher the bloodline, the greater the potential and the richer the essence within the flesh. And to be honest, the meat he just ate had barely surpassed the ordinary level, falling far short of his standards for high-grade quality. Or so he told himself. Without even realizing it, he had walked right to the dining hall storehouse, and pushing the door open, he found a spacious, bright room. Inside, the goods were neatly organized, with various types of demonic beast flesh sorted by their elemental attributes. As we watch his gaze sweep across the room, it quickly settles on the very top of the warehouse shelves. There, a large pool of cold water floated in midair with a white fish swimming inside, prompting him to immediately consult the system. He asked if this fish met the high-grade standard, and the system confirmed it was a Yahello, a creature of significant lineage. It possessed a 7th-rank demonic bloodline, a revelation that filled him with secret joy. After all, if a bloodline reaches the 9th rank, it is considered a divine beast, so this 7th-rank fish was certainly no ordinary catch. He suspected it wasn't even raised on Wanshou Peak, recalling rumors he'd heard back when he first joined the sect. The master of Wanshou Peak was said to be a peculiar man, quite large in stature and possessing an insatiable love for fine food. Naturally, no one in the entire Tai Tru sect dared to offend such a powerful peak master and elder. But since the current situation was quite unique, with the sect members having vanished, he felt he had no reason to hesitate. He reached directly for the large fish, noting that while it was still alive, it had undergone a special preservation treatment. He captured it with ease, but the moment he grabbed the Yahello, Tong Jun let out a desperate cry, "My fish!" The man lamented that he should have eaten it himself, realizing too late that hesitation leads to defeat, while decisiveness leads to dinner. Standing nearby, the robust Su Wuxuan couldn't help but chuckle, noting that the Yahello is a delicacy even among 7th-rank beasts, prized for its sweet flesh. Every inch of its meat is packed with the essence of heaven and earth, offering immense benefits to any cultivator below the nirvana stage. It was a cruel twist of fate. Senior brother Tong Jun had spent a lifetime of effort to obtain this fish, yet he hadn't even tasted it himself. Instead, Shurchi was about to reap the rewards. Meanwhile, back at the peak, the various masters and elders could only press their hands to their foreheads in frustration. Lu Daozha patted Tong Jun on the shoulder, trying to console him by saying it was just a fish, and he could simply catch another one later. Tong Jun retorted huffily that it wasn't that simple, as the Yahello was practically extinct throughout the entire central continent. Only the old demon of reincarnation from the Six Paths sect kept a breeding pair, and to get this single offspring, Tong Jun had to go to extremes. He had traded away countless treasures and agreed to a magical duel that lasted 3 days and nights, nearly collapsing from exhaustion on that cursed mountain. He asked the group if they had any idea how difficult it had been, and hearing his grievance, the others couldn't help but feel a flicker of genuine sympathy. After all, the old demon of reincarnation was a notorious figure in the demonic path, famous across the central continent for his cruelty. He delighted in bullying juniors and stealing treasures, and even when facing cultivators of his own rank, he would force them into brutal combat. He never let anyone off easily. Seeing the distress on his face, the sect leader looked at Tong Jun with concern and addressed him softly. He warned his junior brother not to risk his life like that again, reminding him that the old demon's temperament was notoriously erratic and dangerous. If something had gone wrong during that duel, the consequences would have been dire. Hearing this, Tong Jun let out a cold, confident smirk. He told the sect leader he was overthinking it. While he might not be able to defeat the old demon, the demon certainly couldn't harm him either. Besides, as long as their eldest senior sister was around, the Six Paths sect was destined to remain suppressed and insignificant. Tong Jun looked toward Yu Xiao with absolute pride, knowing the Tai Sword sect's prestige was largely due to her formidable reputation. 500 years ago, she had fought a heavenly sovereign of the same rank and obliterated his soul in just over 100 rounds. That single battle had completely cowed the great powers of the central continent. Yet, despite Tong Jun's grand and boastful words, Yu Xiao only offered a gentle, modest smile before pointing back down toward the scene unfolding within the dining hall. We see a sudden shift in the atmosphere as someone remarks that the Yahello looks a bit dead, causing Tong Jun's expression to sour instantly. Meanwhile, Shurchi was seen carrying the massive fish, nearly as tall as a person, straight into the kitchen, since he didn't know how to use the cooking arrays. He dropped the Yahello onto the floor, and as the fish continued to flop about, he delivered a single, decisive punch to settle it. The fish's angry eyes immediately went clear. After all, the system required him to eat a high-level beast prepared with perfect color, aroma, and taste. After some careful thought, he decided on a recipe for grilled fish and began using a simple kitchen knife to prepare the massive creature. He sliced the Yahello down the middle to butterfly it, but back at the peak, Tong Jun was practically jumping with anxiety at the sight. To him, this was a complete waste of a heavenly treasure, as the sweet, tender meat was meant for steaming or, at the very least, braising. He couldn't fathom why anyone would grill it, while the surrounding peak masters and elders tried their best to calm their junior brother down. They reminded him that the die was already cast. The fish was destined for Shurchi's stomach, and how he chose to eat it was his business. As long as the energy within the beast's flesh could be absorbed and refined, they argued, the cooking method shouldn't really matter. Tong Jun shook his head, gritting his teeth in disagreement, believing that the very essence of life is found in the art of eating. He insisted there is a profound science to it, and among the 3,000 great Taoists, the Tao of food is a top-tier path that should never be neglected. Hearing this, the others finally remembered that when Tong Jun first sought his path, he had actually gained insight into the Tao of food. The problem, of course, was that Shih-Chi was only cooking to satisfy his hunger and absorb the essence for cultivation, not to seek enlightenment. Naturally, he felt free to eat it however he pleased, and just then, a true disciple watched the screen with growing curiosity. The disciple wondered aloud what Shih-Chi was doing, noting that his method of marinating the fish seemed quite unique. The other elders leaned in to watch as Shih-Chi found a massive iron basin and began pouring in salt, rice wine, green onions, and ginger. After scoring the back of the fish with precise cuts, he placed it in the mixture, prompting Shangwan Siyuan to look toward Tong Jun with a question. He asked if this was how grilled fish was supposed to be made, but even Tong Jun frowned, unsure if Shih-Chi was simply removing the fishy odor. The other elders soon realized that Shih-Chi's technique was indeed different, though they themselves had long ago given up eating for spiritual fasting. Even back when they still ate during their lower cultivation stages, they had specialized chefs, so they never truly mastered the culinary arts themselves. And yet, we see that even in their memories of the finest restaurants, no chef had ever used a preparation step quite like this one. The reason for this confusion is quite simple. In this mystical world, cultivation is the only pursuit that truly matters. Powerful experts can fast for 1,000 years, which, naturally, means their everyday life skills are far less developed than those on Earth. For them, grilling usually just means propping food over a fire and tossing on a few spices once it's finally done. Even a food-obsessed expert like Tong Jin lacks any secret recipes, so seeing Shih-Chi handle the fish this way immediately piqued his interest. While his minor display of cooking skills drew the attention of the big shots, Shih-Chi was busy searching the back mountain warehouse. He managed to find some high-quality charcoal, and once the marinated fish was grilled to about 80%, he moved to the next step. He tossed potatoes, cucumbers, and other vegetables into a large flat-bottomed pot, drizzling them with a base sauce fried from various spices. After working for over an hour, the fragrant aroma of the grilled fish finally wafted out, revealing a dish the likes of which they had never seen. The entire sect was practically trembling with excitement, as a wave of chatter erupted among the inner and outer disciples about Shih-Chi's hidden talents. The meat looked incredibly tempting, and they marveled that a 7th-rank beast like the mangacaps could be prepared in such a mouth-watering way. One disciple even offered a mid-grade yellow-rank technique to anyone who had charcoal and fish in their storage ring, a fair trade, in his mind. Even the high-level elders, who had long practiced fasting, had to struggle to suppress their growing appetites at the sight. Tong Jun looked as though he wanted to smash through the barrier just to join Shih-Chi for a meal, letting out a long, melancholy sigh. He admitted he was wrong, declaring that steaming and braising were inferior to this. In the art of eating, Shih-Chi was clearly his superior. He lamented that there is no greater tragedy in this world than having a delicacy right before your eyes that you cannot actually taste. The other elders didn't mock him for his outburst, mostly because they were just as hungry, and they watched as Shih-Chi finally began to eat. The disciples let out a collective wail of envy, while the fasting elders had to force themselves to look away from the screen. As time passed, and the grilled fish was nearly finished, Su Wuxuan suddenly let out a startled cry of surprise. We see the crowd's attention shift as they notice Shih-Chi is now overflowing with spiritual energy, his body glowing so brightly that his refinement speed can't keep up with his eating. At those words, the elders all looked down at once, seeing that Shih-Chi was now completely enveloped in a vibrant red light. Heat was sizzling off his skin, wrapping his entire body in a thick, swirling mist, a sight that was as impressive as it was concerning. They recognized this as a sign of extreme energy overload. After all, Tong Jun had originally intended for this fish to feed several high-ranking guests. There was enough meat for 3 or 4 people, yet every single bite had gone into Shih-Chi's mouth alone. Even with a top-tier technique like the Infinite Tao Treasury, he was struggling to digest it all, a fact that he himself quickly realized. He fought to suppress the rising heat within him, and after finishing the last of the fish, he sprinted toward the training grounds of Wanshou Peak. According to the body-tempering methods in his technique, he had to start training immediately to transform that raw energy into actual power. Upon arriving at the grounds, he immediately began practicing the 5 elements true form fist with frantic intensity. He then moved to the heavy stone locks and equipment, pushing his body to the limit until his bones let out a muffled, resonant crack. The power and spiritual energy within him reached a perfect resonance, and it felt as though an invisible barrier had finally been shattered. The heat radiating from his body vanished instantly, and the red glow on his skin faded back to its normal color. He clenched his fists, realizing he had finally broken through after consuming the flesh of a 7th-rank spirit beast. His physical body had been tempered, and his cultivation reached the 2nd level of the 7th rank, especially after breaking through that internal ceiling. He felt a mysterious surge of amplified strength, and after calming his mind, he immediately tested himself against a 30,000-pound stone weight. To his surprise, he found he could lift it easily with a single arm, so he gradually began to add even more weight to the pile. His tests revealed that his single-arm limit had reached 33,000 pounds, just as a system notification echoed in his mind. The system congratulated him on completing the tutorial mission, rewarding him with a rare purple-tier talent called Maximum Meat Utilization. However, he ignored the system prompts for a moment, simply soaking in the joy of his breakthrough as his muscles rippled with new power. The sensation in his bones was incredibly refreshing, but soon, a wave of deep exhaustion hit him, and he collapsed right there on the training ground. Rhythmic snores soon echoed across the quiet mountain peak, while nearby, the observers noted that Shi was only at the second level of body tempering. The fact that his single-arm strength had already reached 33,000 pounds left the various peak masters and elders utterly stunned. Su Wuxuan spoke up with visible excitement, noting that Shi's foundation was incredibly solid, especially if he could maintain this during key breakthroughs. If his strength doubled 3 more times, his future potential would be limitless, though amidst the joy, a new concern began to surface. The question was how Shi should proceed with his cultivation, as his recent success with the dream method had been a bit of a lucky accident. He would eventually need to find other body tempering techniques, but without a powerful family background or much worldly experience, he was at a disadvantage. How could he possibly know which auxiliary methods to choose? To be honest, if he tried to figure it out alone, he might waste this brilliant start. The sect leader sighed and looked toward the deep thinking Zwichimo, mentioning that they needed to establish contact as soon as possible. Zwichimo responded with a strained expression, assuring his senior brother that he was already working hard on the matter. However, since the little Xiongqi was a puppet designed for internal refinement, it would naturally require a bit more time to adjust. This little Xiongqi puppet represented the hope of everyone there, so Zwichimo took advantage of the time Shi was resting to act. He secretly channeled his divine sense, attempting to upgrade the puppet's controls while Shi enjoyed a night of deep, restorative sleep. By the next morning, Shi's flesh and bones were fully rejuvenated, and feeling at his peak, he made his way to the mountain pond. After a simple meal of leeks, he headed toward Lifeng Valley at the foot of Wanshou Peak, stopping briefly at the valley entrance. We see him reading the stone tablet, which explained that the monsters within Lifeng Valley did not exceed the body tempering realm. However, many high-tier bloodline beasts were quite powerful, especially in the back half of the valley, requiring disciples to proceed with caution. This was a trial ground specifically cordoned off by the sect for body-tempering disciples, and without hesitation, he stepped inside. Before he could even admire the scenery, the system's voice echoed in his ear, announcing his arrival at Lifeng Valley. An extra guidance mission was triggered: kill any monster to receive a rare gold-tier reward called Battle Mystic Heart. This reward would allow him to endlessly improve his combat intelligence through continuous fighting, a prospect that made him raise an intrigued eyebrow. A gold-tier reward certainly sounds impressive, and besides, fighting monsters was exactly why he had come here in the first place. It was, one might say, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, but as he was quietly celebrating his luck, he failed to notice a hidden danger. A massive emerald snake suddenly lunged from the roadside shadows. However, even though he hadn't seen the serpent coming, the moment the creature struck, his physical instincts took over, allowing him to instinctively sidestep the lethal blow. The emerald snake crashed into a giant boulder instead, and with a loud bang, the seemingly solid rock shattered into a dozen pieces. Seeing this, he immediately dropped into a fighting stance to unleash his fist technique, ready to give the beast a proper welcome. Meanwhile, the atmosphere back at the sect was electric, as inner and outer disciples alike watched the broadcast alongside the elite disciples. The elites recognized the emerald snake's lineage instantly, noting with some amusement that their leaders certainly knew how to pick a challenge. Wanshou Peak had 3 hunting zones suitable for body tempering, yet Lifeng Valley was home to the most ferocious monsters of them all. Indeed, this iron-tailed azure snake possessed a 3rd-tier bloodline, with an attack power comparable to a cultivator at the 5th level. The creature was not only powerful, but an expert at hiding. One disciple even recalled seeing it at the valley entrance 9 years ago. To survive in Lifeng Valley for 9 years is no small feat, proving that this particular snake was far from a simple opponent. While hundreds of thousands of disciples debated the outcome, we see Shi slam his fist directly into the massive head of the serpent. Driven by his body's maximum physical limit and the power of a high-grade heaven-tier technique, the strike exploded with a force that far exceeded his baseline of 33,000 pounds. The crowd gasped, marveling that Shi was only at the 2nd level. He truly was a genius, the likes of which appear once in a million years. However, some wondered why the iron-tailed azure snake had simply frozen in place as the blow approached. One senior laughed, asking if the younger disciples really thought a monster could be frightened into a stupor by just any punch. He reminded them that once a high-level martial skill is mastered, it carries a terrifying aura that projects pure dominance. This aura exerts a powerful pressure on any weaker life form, and in this case, it had completely paralyzed the beast with fear. Shurchi had been practicing the sect's supreme martial art, the high-grade Heaven Tier 5 Moon's Fist, and had already reached the level of minor mastery. To show such prowess in his very first real battle was impressive. After all, high natural talent doesn't always translate to combat strength. Any lack of combat intelligence must be forged through countless battles, and killing the iron-tailed azure snake with a single punch was a fine start. It was the first step in building an invincible conviction, though his strike was perhaps a bit too fierce, leaving him with no cards held back. The elder told himself there would be time to teach him later, and with that thought, he turned his gaze back down toward the valley. As for our young hero, the moment the beast fell, the system's reward notifications began to flood his mind. He was congratulated on completing the tutorial mission, though the terms used were a bit abstract and would likely only make sense in the heat of battle. Despite a slight lingering discomfort from his first kill, he quickly regained his composure and continued deeper into Lifeng Valley. As the trial progressed, his Battle Profound Star talent began to take effect, making him feel increasingly at home in the rhythm of combat. Eventually, he reached the center of the valley, where a massive river carved the landscape into two distinct sections. In the first half of the valley, the strongest monsters he had encountered possessed only third-tier bloodlines, comparable to the 6th level of body tempering. He had handled them one by one until reaching that central river, which stood as a natural boundary before him. The Gale Valley was split into two distinct sections. In the first half, the strongest beast he encountered possessed only a third-order bloodline. Hardly a challenge, really. Even though those beasts were as strong as a 6th-level cultivator, he hadn't yet set foot in the much more dangerous second half of the valley. He could sense the rising danger ahead, but to be honest, that was exactly what he wanted for his growth. Whether it was mastering his Battle Profound Star or his Wuji Dao cultivation, both required life-and-death struggle, so he leapt across the river. Watching this bold move from the secret realm above, many disciples couldn't help but look on with a mix of surprise and worry. They discussed the massive power gap that bloodline strength creates between monsters, noting that Shurchi had just slain a formidable foe. Having defeated a third-tier beast, his confidence was surging, leading him to believe the second half of the valley wouldn't be much worse. He was likely in for a rude awakening, but for now, we see him advancing steadily along the main path into the unknown. As he moved forward, Shurchi could sense powerful auras lurking all around him, growing even more intense the deeper he ventured. Instead of feeling fear, he felt a growing sense of excitement, and he decided to stop hiding his own presence entirely. To the monsters nearby, this was a blatant provocation, and soon a massive gray bear emerged from the dense forest. Its fur was incredibly long, and its claws glowed with a sinister red light, prompting the watching disciples to quickly identify it. This was a Firepalm Bear, a 4th-tier bloodline beast known for its impenetrable defense and devastatingly powerful strikes. It seemed Shurchi's luck had run out for his first battle in the second half of the valley. Perhaps no other beasts would even be needed. The Firepalm Bear alone would likely show him the true terror of Lifeng Valley, and at that point, the outcome seemed certain. The observers expected him to lose heart and retreat, but their thoughts were interrupted by a sudden wave of shocked cries from the outer sect. We see the battle erupting below as the Firepalm Bear takes the initiative, lunging toward him with terrifying speed. He nimbly dodged the crushing overhead attack, even finding the breath to mock the beast for its lack of martial etiquette. The beast couldn't understand his words, of course, but it clearly sensed his disdain and charged at him with renewed fury. It swung its massive paws repeatedly, creating waves of scorching heat, yet Shurchi remained calm, aided by his Battle Profound Star. Using only slight movements of his upper body, he evaded every single blow, a display that left the spectators absolutely speechless. Su Wuxuan, the master of the Merit Transmission Peak, watched with visible excitement, noting that this wasn't just a movement technique. It was a display of combat skills that Shurchi was refining in real time, a sentiment that Yu Xiao was quick to agree with. He noted that in the previous fights, Shurchi's ability to observe and learn while under pressure was simply extraordinary. In fact, he had never seen anyone with such a natural instinct for battle, a statement that sent a ripple of shock through the disciples. The other elders joined in, offering their congratulations to the sect leader on discovering such a rare and gifted talent. They claimed the sect had gained a true prodigy whose future was limitless, perhaps even capable of restoring their former glory. Hearing this, the sect leader prepared to offer some grand words of his own as he watched the young man's progress. Suddenly, the surrounding disciples cry out in shock as Shurchi encounters yet another beast, and we see him looking down at the threat. The battle below erupts once more, as it turns out he hadn't left the area after winning his previous fight. He soon finds himself facing a formidable new enemy, one even more powerful than the Firepalm Bear from before. But after only a few rounds, he cuts it down, leaving the elders to nod in approval at his impressive display. When Shurchi killed the Firepalm Bear, he only truly struck once. It was, for all intents and purposes, an instant kill. It was only natural for him to keep moving forward, even if this new beast managed to struggle against him for a short while. It was clear Shurchi still had strength to spare, and as expected, he decided to venture even deeper into the valley. We see his next opponent is a 5th-tier bloodline beast, a truly remarkable challenge that might actually put him in real danger. By the look of things, Shurchi won't stop until it's dead, and though he's taken some hits after 50 rounds, he refuses to back down. He slowly turns the disadvantage into an upper hand, proving that his talent for combat is simply extraordinary. After 80 grueling rounds, the 5th-tier bloodline beast finally falls by Shurchi's hand. The Wuyue True Form Fist shows such power even at the minor mastery level. It truly is the sect's greatest weapon. One would think Shurchi would return to rest now, but to everyone's surprise, he continues to push forward. He has entered the heart of the 5th-tier beast territory, a place so dangerous that a pincer attack could cost him his life. The observers are filled with anxiety, but of course, he can't hear a single word of their frantic warnings. At this moment, though his clothes are stained with blood, his spirit remains as vibrant and energetic as ever. Most of that blood belongs to the beasts he's slain, and for a man with an ordinary body to achieve this is quite a feat. He owes this success entirely to the body tempering method found within the Wuji Daoist canon. This technique allows him to sharpen his combat experience and physical strength simultaneously through the heat of battle. When paired with his Battle Profound Star, the results are doubled, making every fight a stepping stone for his growth. His vital energy and physical strength have increased significantly, and though he hasn't tested his limits yet, Shurchi can feel that his raw power has grown by much more than just a small margin. Because he is hunting high-grade beasts, his techniques are becoming more refined with every passing moment of combat. This is why he grows bolder as the fight continues, though the observers within the Tai Jinshu remain unaware of his secret. They are simply left in a state of shock, wondering how Shurchi can possibly be this courageous. To fight his way from the entrance of Lifeng Valley all the way to its deepest reaches is, frankly, terrifying. Some suggest that even the late Sect Master Song was only this capable, or perhaps he has already surpassed him. After all, Sect Master Song possessed the peerless tyrant body, giving him a natural advantage in physical combat. Yet our Shurchi has only an ordinary body. Yes, he is matching a tyrant body with mere mortal flesh. It is truly incredible, leaving the Holy Sun silent and struggling with a sense of frustration he cannot hide. While the other elders are filled with excitement, Tongjun stands alone with a heavy, solemn expression. He watches the figure drawing closer to the finish line and hesitates to speak, a detail the sect master quickly notices. With a look of concern, the sect master asks what is wrong, as Tongjun looks like a man who has committed a grave error. Tongjun asks if he should speak his mind, and the sect master, currently in high spirits, gives him a wide smile. He reminds him they have been brothers for thousands of years, so there is nothing he couldn't say or be forgiven for. The other elders laugh along, noting that since the sect has gained a supreme genius today, all is well. They insist that even if he had caused a great disaster, the sect would surely stand behind him now. Moved by their reassurances, Tongjun decides he can no longer keep the truth to himself. He explains it isn't a disaster exactly, but rather that their supreme genius is likely about to die. The laughter stops instantly as the sect master's face darkens, demanding to know what nonsense he is talking about. The sect master snaps, asking how he could curse a junior like that, but Tongjun quickly defends himself, claiming he would never be that kind of person. He explains that the reason for his grim warning is that he has been secretly raising a taiga banwang at the very end of Lifeng Valley. Upon hearing this, the sect master's eyes widen in utter disbelief, barely able to choke out a confused what. Tongjun had snatched this opportunity from a gathering place of great demons in the Endless Mountains, intending to domesticate it as a surprise for the sect. But as they say, plans rarely survive contact with reality, and Tongjun's voice grows weaker as he realizes the gravity of his secret. Who would have thought that the stout and seemingly simple Tongjun was quietly harboring a beast of the bone-type lineage within the sect grounds? The sect master, Su Wuxuan, is nearly speechless with rage, demanding to know why such a massive matter wasn't reported, especially since a taiga banwang has an 8th-rank bloodline. Such a beast is only a single step away from reaching the divine rank, a truly terrifying prospect for any young disciple to face. An adult of its kind possesses strength comparable to a human Saint King. Keeping such a ferocious beast in Lifeng Valley was, frankly, incredibly reckless. Yu Xiao frowns deeply, asking Tongjun to clarify exactly how powerful this particular taiga banwang actually is. Tongjun bows his head in defeat, admitting that while it is still a juvenile, a single strike from the creature carries over 1,000,000 pounds of force. Furthermore, being of the bone-type lineage, it possesses innate divine abilities. He estimates a human cultivator would need to be at the peak of the soul-refining realm just to survive. Even then, they would need high-tier divine abilities and several days of long-range attrition just to wear the beast down. And as for close-quarters combat, to be perfectly honest, attempting to fight a bone-type beast at arm's length is nothing short of suicidal. He cannot imagine anyone succeeding that way, unless, perhaps, they were armed with divine artifacts and talismans prepared well in advance. At the very least, one would need to be at the spirit-severing stage to even stand a chance, a realization that hangs heavy in the air. As his words sink in, the hearts of the elders grow cold. This is a monster that Shurchi simply cannot handle. Their conversation is overheard by the nearby core disciples, and the news spreads like wildfire through the entire Taizhinshu. In an instant, everyone is stunned to learn that Elder Tong has been raising a Taigu Banwang on Myriad Beast Peak this whole time. Most believe the species was extinct, yet here one sits, waiting in the shadows not far from where Shurchi is currently standing. The crowd begins to murmur that Shurchi is in grave danger and must not go any further, but we find our protagonist in a very different state of mind. After a brief moment of rest, he suddenly turns his head, peering deep into the heart of the valley. In a daze, he thought he heard the low growl of a beast, a sound that, while faint, made his heart skip a beat. He quickly suppresses his aura and moves cautiously along the path. Half an hour later, he leaps onto a giant tree to get a better view. There, at the very end of the valley, he spots a massive tiger-like demon beast hunched over, devouring the remains of its prey. Just as he is observing the creature, the system's notification suddenly rings out sharply within his mind. Having detected that the host has encountered the 8th rank Taigu Banwang, a formal quest has been triggered. In this world of the strong, he is tasked with either killing or subduing the beast within the next 50 days. Success will grant him 3 spins on the reward wheel, and during these particular draws, he could obtain rare talents, divine weapons, or powerful mystical techniques, a prospect that leaves him momentarily stunned. The system certainly has a lot of tricks up its sleeve. 50 days of cultivation isn't exactly generous, but it isn't impossibly tight either. He knows his current strength is far from enough, and he'll need to reach the body tempering stage to even stand a chance. To push himself to the limit, he spends every day in Lifeng Valley, honing his combat and tempering techniques to their absolute peak. Aside from the Taigu Banwang's territory, he has already cleared out every other corner of the valley with methodical precision. Seeing his cautious yet diligent performance, the elders finally breathe a sigh of relief, marveling at the talent of this young prodigy. In the blink of an eye, 3 days have passed since he entered the valley, and we find him practicing his strikes on the training grounds. As a powerful surge of energy suddenly washes over him, he realizes he has successfully broken through to the 3rd level of body tempering. He grabs the stone weights from the ground, adding more and more to test the true extent of his new strength. He discovers that a single arm now carries a force of 108,000 pounds, a feat that fills him with silent joy. He muses that with this kind of divine power, he would be a literal Superman if he ever returned to the modern world. Suddenly, we hear the faint sound of metal scraping against the ground, and we see the little scrap iron Xiongqi approaching. The small creature flies low, clutching a scroll between its 4 paws, and Shurchi reaches down to take the book from beneath its belly. After a quick flip through the pages, he discovers that this is a manual detailing the specific cultivation requirements for the emerald body. It explains that when refining the emerald body, the physical strength of the practitioner will double upon reaching key levels. While progress should be swift, one must polish the physical body to its absolute limit before each breakthrough to establish a firm foundation. Ordinary cultivators need only try their best, but a true genius must use these 3 doubling points to push their limits to the maximum. He reads the contents aloud in shock, learning that at the 3rd level of the emerald body, arm strength should exceed 80,000 pounds. By the 6th level, it should surpass 400,000, and at the 9th level, it reaches a staggering 1.6 million pounds. This is the path to a supreme foundation, and right then, he makes a firm resolution to achieve this legendary status for himself. He aims to advance to the rank of Heavenly Venerate in the most perfect state possible, though he soon realizes he has hit a bit of a snag. To be honest, the effectiveness of his current combat and digestion methods for the emerald body has already begun to wane. Furthermore, the stockpile of high-level demon beast flesh in the warehouse is no longer sufficient for his needs. He desperately needs a new way to temper his body to the limit, and just as he is feeling stuck, he finds a solution. At the very end of the manual, several other methods are recorded, including the medicinal bath vein-warming technique. After reading carefully, he is overjoyed and picks up the little Qiongqi, affectionately calling the creature Tai Tai. He marvels that the little beast actually has a soul and understood his troubles, so he decides to head to Baichao Peak to find the necessary herbs. A little later, we see him steering his flight toward Baichao Peak, a sight that makes the watching elders finally breathe a sigh of relief. Su Wuxuan is so moved he is nearly in tears, thinking that after all this effort, Shurchi has finally seen the light. It seems the young man is aware of the emerald body's potential and is now aiming for that legendary supreme foundation. Shangguan Siyuan nods in agreement, wondering if the boy is seeking the medicinal bath method or perhaps the pill-based flesh-nourishing technique. Lu Daojia replies with a smile that it doesn't really matter which one he chooses, since their junior brother Wang is a true master of this path. As the master of Baichao Peak, Wang Xiaozhong hears the praise from his fellow disciples and lets out a self-satisfied laugh. It turns out Wang Xiaozhong isn't just world-class at alchemy. He is also a specialist in the cultivation and application of medicinal herbs. He has refined and developed many methods for the emerald body, which provided great assistance to the holy sons and daughters during their training. Though they didn't quite reach a supreme foundation, they achieved a top-tier level, and we see Shi currently steering his flight toward the peak. Suddenly, the familiar voice of the system rings out once again. Shi raises an eyebrow at the sound. The system is surprisingly intelligent, triggering a new mission at exactly the right moment. It's a simple check-in task, and he wonders if the system is worried he won't understand the methods at Baichao Peak. He ponders this as he travels. Before long, he arrives at his destination and quickly heads toward the herb garden, eager to try the medicinal bath vein-warming technique. Just as he reaches the garden gates, the system notification chimes right on time, signaling that his new talent has officially taken effect. He begins searching for a medicinal bath recipe to test out, when suddenly, little Tai Tai leaps out from his arms. Following the creature's lead, he makes his way into a grand hall at Baichao Peak that is absolutely overflowing with medical texts. Amidst the chaotic piles of books, Tai Tai manages to find a table specifically dedicated to medicinal bath recipes. Shi gives the little beast a big thumbs up, impressed that Tai Tai is such a capable local guide who knows every corner of the place. He picks up several of the formulas and begins to examine them closely, and what he discovers is truly remarkable. Despite having never studied herbalism before, he feels a sharp intuition rising within him. He can instinctively judge the strength of each recipe, and we see him frowning as he mutters that one particular formula is far too inferior. He notes that another is just mediocre, wondering who designed it, as using it for vein warming would be an insult. One recipe shows a bit of skill, but only a bit, and none of them meet the high standards he's looking for. What he doesn't realize, however, is that someone is listening. Wang Xiaozhong is absolutely fuming after hearing those words, wondering what on earth the boy means by questioning his expertise. These are formulas from a scholar with 3,000 years of experience. After all, hearing this, the other elders rush to comfort him, urging junior brother Wang to stay calm. They ask why he would lower himself to a junior's level, noting that Shi's knowledge is simply too shallow to grasp the subtle mysteries of his work. It's only natural, they say, and as he listens to their persuasion, we see Wang Xiaozhong slowly beginning to regain his composure. He then looks down toward the hall with a lingering sense of resentment. He doesn't blame the boy for being ignorant, but he finds the constant chatter quite irritating. To be honest, he's offended that a novice is pointing out his supposed shortcomings. Does the boy even understand herbs well enough to call these recipes inferior? He can't believe the boy claimed they didn't meet his standards. As Wang continues to grumble, the elders nod along, doing their best to soothe his ego. No one wants his temper to flare up again. However, the master of Tiangong Peak, Lu Daojia, can't help but chime in with a rather pointed question. He asks if the recipes actually are of an inferior quality. As soon as those words leave his mouth, the atmosphere in the room shifts instantly. The others turn to look at him in complete disbelief, while Shangguan Siyuan simply sighs and shakes his head at the bluntness of it all. Wang admits that while his formulas can't compare to the ancient ones left by the ancestors, one must remember that the world has changed significantly since then. Many spiritual herbs are now extinct, making the old ways impossible. He explains that while these particular recipes were drafted somewhat casually, they are still perfectly functional, even if they aren't top tier. After hearing this explanation, the group finally begins to understand the situation. We see that while these medicinal bath recipes aren't necessarily bad, there is a certain irony to the whole affair. For someone with Shi's talent, the kind that reaches the 9th floor of the library, using such mediocre methods would indeed be an insult. The sect master gives the indignant Wang Xiaozhong a knowing look and decides that since Shi didn't mean any harm, it's time to move on. He suggests they focus on helping the boy find the correct formula, asking junior brother Wang and junior brother Zhua to cooperate for a moment. Now that the sect master has spoken, Wang Xiaozhong drops his grievance. He knows when it's time to stop arguing and get back to business. He stands side by side with Zhuoqimo, pointing toward the hidden location where the truly elite medicinal bath formulas are stored. Zhuoqimo immediately sends the mechanical Qiongqi to circle around Shi, who is currently busy placing the rejected recipes back on the table. Deep down, Shi is feeling quite puzzled. It makes no sense to him that a sect with a heritage of tens of millions of years would have such poor options. He wonders how the medicinal bath formulas could possibly be this mediocre, unless the elders took the truly precious recipes with them during the sect's evacuation. Perhaps he simply hasn't found the right storage location yet. Just then, he feels a sudden vibration and movement right at his feet. We see the little mechanical Qiongqi circling his legs, and with a spark of realization, Shi decides to let the little creature lead the way. Sure enough, it heads toward a small path in the shop. He follows it into a quiet back room, curious to see what lies hidden there. The mechanical beast stops at the corner of a drawer, and when Shi pulls it open, he finds a hidden formula tucked away inside. His heart leaps with joy at the discovery, but as he finishes reading through the details, his eyes narrow in careful contemplation. While this recipe far exceeds the previous ones, the physical boost it provides isn't enough to build a supreme foundation, and it takes far too long. It simply won't do for the heavenly tribulation coming in 3 years. He paces the room, lost in thought, until a few moments later. A bold idea is born in his mind. Since none of the existing formulas here are suitable for his needs, he reaches a daring conclusion. He decides he will simply write a new formula himself. Even though he lacks formal pharmaceutical training, he can rely on his heart of clarity talent. He can use that gift to perfectly balance the herbs. The more he thinks about it, the more feasible the plan seems, and he celebrates with a quick drink. Right then and there, he decides to create something entirely unique, a formula the world has never seen before. He intends to craft a recipe that can truly help one achieve a supreme foundation. He replaces the old formula and heads straight for the herb garden. Meanwhile, the elders can hardly believe their ears when they hear his plan. To ignore a ready-made formula in favor of inventing one's own? It seems absurd. Upon hearing this, Wang Xiaozhong is so overwhelmed with indignation that he nearly faints on the spot. He could tolerate the boy calling his casual sketches inferior, but this was different. This was a direct challenge to his expertise. To have his life's proudest work, perfected over 1,000 years, dismissed so easily was more than he could bear. Even the sect master can no longer defend him. He feels that Shi's current behavior has become far too arrogant, bordering on blind conceit, which is never a good sign. Pretending to be an expert in a field one doesn't understand will only lead to disaster. In his view, Shi's character needs more work than his cultivation. The other elders quickly chime in, agreeing that the boy's temperament is becoming a serious concern for the sect's future. Shi's behavior today is indeed far too arrogant. While his talent is undoubtedly the best in our sect, his understanding of herbs is another matter. How much could he possibly know? Most importantly, he isn't questioning just any ordinary elder, but the original master himself, Wang Xiaozhong. Elder Wang's herbal philosophy is considered the best in the world, with very few who can even compare. Regarding these 9 specific herbs, Shi actually wants to create something better, which sounds like a total pipe dream. Upon hearing these supportive words, Elder Wang feels a bit comforted, yet he maintains a stern expression as he looks down. He thinks that if the boy looks down on his formula, he actually regrets bringing it out at all. If the boy is so capable, he truly shouldn't use it. The other elders exchange glances at this. Xuanji Lu Daojia pats his shoulder to comfort him, noting that while Shi is indeed a bit arrogant and wild, young people often lack perspective, and it's normal for them to make a fool of themselves. There is no need to lower himself to the boy's level. How could the boy possibly understand that these herbal concepts belong to Elder Wang? He is more than just a single person in this field. The plan is to guide him back to using the 9-turn golden dragon soup for his medicinal bath. Hearing this suggestion, Wang Xiaozhong sighs, tired of the same old excuses. He decides to let it go and forgive the boy just this once. He looks towards Wachimo, and just as he is about to control the mechanical beast again, we see Shi sitting amidst a pile of books in the Great Hall of Herbs, reading a detailed guide on spiritual plants with great interest. Wang Xiaozhong stares in utter disbelief. It seems the boy is actually trying to learn, and that specific book was written by the elder himself. However, the content of that book is quite disorganized, which is why he had never shown it to anyone on the outside before. But as he watches Shi reading with such focused intensity, sometimes having a sudden realization, sometimes looking overjoyed, his mood shifts. Just a moment ago, he was furious at the boy's disdain, but seeing him read his own writings so seriously, the fire of his anger simply refuses to burn. The sect master walks over with a chuckle, noting that it seems Shi truly understands him. To be honest, the path of herbal medicine is vast and profound. It is not something one masters in an afternoon. Elder Wang studied for over 1,000 years to achieve his success. What could Shi possibly gain from looking at it now? Does he truly believe he can surpass Elder Wang and create his own unique formula? Even as the sect master speaks, he wonders if Shi can actually grasp the profound principles hidden within those pages. After flipping through the detailed explanation of herbs, the boy should understand just how difficult this task really is. Yet, he refuses to leave the library, leaving the other disciples to whisper amongst themselves in confusion. They had assumed Shi's bold words meant he had a secret plan, but it seems his plan is just studying on the fly. His reading speed is unerringly fast. Surely he isn't actually trying to invent a body-tempering formula from scratch. After all, top-tier formulas are the guarded secrets of great sects, often requiring the life's work of several generations. One disciple even bets that if Shi creates something better than Elder Wang, he'll personally scrub every floor in the Sanus Hall. 3 days pass in the blink of an eye, and we see Shi maintaining that same frantic pace while making frequent trips to the herb garden. He carefully compares the texts with the physical spiritual plants, leaving everyone doubting their own eyes until the 4th day arrives. Finally, he snaps the last book shut, closes his eyes in deep thought for a moment, and begins writing on a blank sheet of paper.